Yeah, it happens. All right, so I should be live again. Let me go ahead and pull up my restream chat. Goodness. Okay. So, let me go ahead and pull up the chat once more. All right. Yeah, everybody, like, I apologize. Hold on, I am back. Okay. Yeah. So this is part 2 of that setback. How long was I out, man? Hold on, let me see. Can I even like show you my screen?
Probably like an hour.
How was not an hour?
Yeah, probably. It's just kind of my vibes about it.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Let me go ahead and share my screen in 1 second. Window preview. Let's go ahead and do this one more time. Man, I can't believe that this is the more stable version. Can't even fucking
Yeah.
use.
It's pretty crazy what they've done to us.
I know, dude. They just, like I said, I just started speaking honestly. There we go. I just started speaking honestly about the election. Let's see. Anime is not an avatar; it's just a cartoon. Somebody in my chat just said that. I don't know if that's the
Anime is
case.
not an avatar.
You mean Avatar is not an anime? Let's see. It just sounds like incredulity, not some respectable skepticism. You not saying that it's conspiratorial to assume so many are working together to thwart Trump. Just disingenuous. Dude, come on, man. Given everything that's been transpiring in the past few days, I mean, it's not really far-fetched for people to engage in that sort of that line of thinking. Again, I don't really do conspiracies on the show at all. I mean, obviously, I have my strong opinions about the election, which is, one order of business. However, let's just go ahead and move on because we're just not gonna
Yeah. We're kind
fundamentally
of like
agree.
circling the
Yeah,
drain.
so again, to the theme was is kind of is Destiny justified in feeling that the way that he did because Willie Mack was concerned with a lot of the stuff that he discovered or a lot of the things that he came across. Whatever. Again, I don't even know what he came across. I did send him a bunch of stuff, and again, whatever Willie Mack, whatever decision he comes to, that's his choice. But I mean, let's just get to the
Yeah,
the
let's
heart
get
of
to
the
the
issue,
heart of
which
it.
is the J6
Yeah.
insurrection. So you feel that there was like a legitimate insurrection that transpired on January 6th, 2021?
Yes, I do. I just want to have one quick because they're pinging me in the chat. One
Yeah.
quick thing. Apparently, the Gateway pundit, and you can respond to this, and I won't respond back. But the Gateway pundit, according to news something, what is it called? News
NewsGuard.
Guard, that it's not reliable. That's what they're saying in the chat, that it's like not reliable according to NewsGuard. But you can
Well,
respond to that. I won't respond back.
it was before because me and Tim
Okay.
Pool looked it up.
You
And
and Temple
yeah,
separately.
he referenced it numerous times on his show too. Again, there's not just me. Again, things have changed. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about happened 3.5, 4 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I don't work for the Gateway Pundit. The only person
You work for Tim
that
Pool.
no, the only person that I'm aware of that does or used to work at the Gateway Pundit is Cassandra Fairbanks, and I do not like her.
Oh, what's she about?
She's basically aligned with Tim Pool as far as I know, and oh man, I don't want to get into it because again, I just it's a personal stuff. I don't like her for a number like oh man, she's just a disingenuous person who defends people who are reprehensible and who are dishonest. And again, I'm all about transparency. So when there's issues with
Right.
some
Yeah.
of the guests that are on the show and they present themselves as one thing, but they're really another, there's two individuals that I can think of, which is Jack Murphy and Eliza Blue. And I mentioned, I'm like, look, like your fans, your viewers have legitimate concerns about these people and you guys are defending them enthusiastically. I'm like, why? Like, what's the deal
Right.
here?
Right.
I don't know if you're aware of Eliza Blue or Jack Murphy, but
No.
yeah. So
Are they
we
like right wingers or something?
well, Jack Murphy is I don't know what Cassandra Fairbanks categorizes herself. I think she's like a libertarian or something to that effect. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's see. She's just Team Tim Pool. But again, I don't want to get into those waters. Let's just get
Yeah.
back
You were
to
asking me questions about Jan
yeah, just a
6. You asked me
J6.
if
So
it.
you
Yeah.
believe that was like a
Hit me.
legitimate insurrection?
When you say legitimate, you mean a like it is a correct usage of the term insurrection to describe those events. Is that your question?
Yeah.
Yes, I do believe that's true.
Now, why do you believe that it was a insurrection? First of all,
When
can
I
you like
go,
define like
yeah,
insurrection? Just I'm not gonna dispute it. I just want to know what your
yeah,
definition is of the insurrection.
yeah. So I go by the definition used by various scholars related to Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. So when
Okay.
I am referring to an insurrection, I'm going by what I believe to be the original public meaning of the Section 3 definition of, or sorry, Section 3 usage of the term insurrection. And I
Yeah.
think that has been adequately described. I'm about to give you a definition,
I'm
but I think
listening.
that's been both adequately described by scholars in who are amici in the underlying Anderson case related to the disqualification of Trump, by Bod and Paulson, two writers, legal writers, and also by the district court in Colorado, which disqualified Trump initially. And that definition, I think, can loosely be characterized as the following:
And that
an
didn't hold up,
insurrection.
correct?
It didn't hold up for reasons related to federalism and the inability of states, according to the court, to enforce Section 3, not related to the definition of insurrection, which has not been touched by the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the definition I usually use in these conversations is the one provided by the Colorado court, which kind of analyzed contemporary dictionaries and other usages of the time, that an insurrection is, quote, a public use of force or threat of force, 2, by a group of people, 3, to hinder or prevent execution of the Constitution of the United States. Now, I would amend that outside of the Section 3 context. If it's an insurrection with respect to a state, it wouldn't necessarily be against the Constitution of the United States. I would be talking about like the state government or the state constitution. But for purposes of this, it doesn't really matter. I'm saying hinder or prevent execution of either the Constitution or the respective state frameworks, be they constitutions or state statutory frameworks. Does that make
Okay.
sense? And thank you for the raid from Dylan Burns. Appreciate it.
All right.
Do you have a problem with that definition?
No, not really. No. Use of force. Got it.
Well, no. A public use of force or
Okay.
threat of force. So non-public uses of force or threats of force wouldn't suffice. So, for example, a secret coup d'état behind closed doors would not be a public use of force. It would not be an insurrection. By a group of people, so it's not enough for there to be one person. A lone gunman isn't going to be an insurrection if he's not helped by anybody. So it requires a group, more than one. So that's 2 or more. And to hinder or prevent execution of the Constitution of the United States, it can't be for some other aim. It can't be to like for revenge or for personal reasons or for reasons related to like personal financial debts you might have. It has to be for that specific purpose. So all of those elements, every word of it is important.
Okay. And you think President Trump's activities, I guess, during January 6th meets that threshold?
Donald Trump's activities?
Well, yeah. I mean, he's the one being accused of insurrection. Is that correct?
He's accused of engaging in insurrection.
Okay. He engaged. What exactly does that mean?
So to engage, so engage in insurrection is, again, another term of art, which when I use it, reference to the constitutional standard. And that is essentially to have a volitional, a conscious decision to promote or to help in some respect. And that doesn't mean that you are using force, right? So if I engage in an insurrection, it may not be that I'm using force, but I'm assisting others who are, or I'm intending to bring about the insurrection in some way. So an example might be if I'm selling arms to the Confederacy for the purpose of preventing or hindering the Constitution of the United States in the context of the Civil War, even though I'm not myself using public force, I am engaged in, I'm taking some conscious and volitional act to assist the public use of force. So
now,
that's
what act
the kind of,
did he specifically engage in to meet this threshold?
he incited the insurrection, and as a president as well, it is my belief that he has certain affirmative obligations, which he cannot delegate, which he failed to do. So usually, I would say there is no affirmative duty to prevent an insurrection, but for specifically this context and the president's responsibilities and his delay and gross recklessness, I think that his absence of an action in this context constitutes engagement as well as his incitement.
So I get so him not doing anything would fall into this category?
Right. So for to give you an example in the real world, imagine that you are the babysitter of a child, right? You assume that duty,
Okay.
right? You assume the duty to care for and babysit a child. Fair? If
Okay.
you do that and you just like decide not to feed the kid, you agree that there can be such things as affirmative duties to act if one kind of adopts those duties and agrees to take them on.
Okay. I'm
So
following.
yeah,
But
so like
let's stick to Trump though. What
yeah, that was just an
did he
analogy.
call directly for violence against members of the elected government during the process of certification or during the process of inquiry
Did he call for violence specifically against individual members? Is your question?
or even a group?
He did not specifically call literally for violence against elected officials.
Okay. And how exactly would him that be considered him carrying out or engaging in or participating in any meaningful way in insurrection if he didn't call directly for violence or if he didn't or if he wasn't engaged in violently charged speech or
Again, you're
was
already
he
messed
that I'm
up.
not aware of?
Again, you're already messing up the definition I gave you. You just used the term violence. That term does not appear anywhere in the definition I gave you. Agreed?
Yeah, no, but one would think an insurrection would constitute violence. Can we agree on that?
I thought we just agreed on the definition. Did you or did you not agree with my definition?
No, I did, but
Okay.
I'm
So
trying to understand, where exactly you're coming from,
yeah,
because I'm
so
having a hard
I'm taking
time.
issue. You're not being precise right now, right? So it's important when we're using these terms to be precise. And so the definition that I gave you does not include the term violence. It uses the term a public use of force
Okay,
or threat of force.
so
Okay?
threats can be construed as like violent, though. Using force can be construed as violent. I
By
mean, we're
some people,
splitting
but not
hairs here.
but
We're
not
splitting
everybody.
hairs here.
Well,
I
hang
don't
on.
want to get caught up in the.
We're
I
not
mean,
we're
I'm
not
hoping you
we're not
understand what
splitting
I mean when I use those words. Okay, so all right, let me rephrase then, just for the sake of argument. What did he say or do to suggest that force is implied in his actions? Or I'm curious. Like, did he say something specifically to meet that threshold, or did he physically do something? I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, so when you are examining his words and whether or not he intended for force to be threatened or used, fair enough. Both would satisfy the definition, sorry, the insurrection definition that you've agreed to, correct?
Sure.
Okay. So when you are saying that a person incited something, that's how he engaged. I argue one of the ways of the two ways that I've identified is he incited. The other is he failed. He was fail. Sorry, he failed in his non-delegable duties to protect the Capitol. So they're two ways. The first way was incitement. That's how he engaged. To say that someone incited, they had to intend to bring about a particular result. They had to it had to be reasonably foreseeable that that occurred, and then it had to have actually occurred. Okay, for the purposes of this. I believe that you take those words in their full context, in the totality of circumstances.
And what
I
words
believe also,
exactly? What words exactly were
yeah.
used to bring about
So
this insurrection?
the speech of the at the ellipse in its entirety recommends sorry, that is the incitement to the insurrection at the Capitol.
What? Okay. Well, how exactly?
In their context, it is absolutely reasonable, foreseeable that Donald Trump's call to have the mob, which he knew to be riled up by anger related to false claims of election fraud, direct them towards the Capitol and use the words that he did to get them to input or to try to get the alternate slates of electors, the fake slates of electors, inputted as the quote real electors, that was reasonably foreseeable that it would lead to exactly what it led
But
to.
what were
That
these
anybody,
exact words?
hang on a second. Do you agree or not, or do you not agree that Trump's rhetoric at the ellipse was reasonably foreseeable that actions at the Capitol would escalate into illegal force or threat of force?
unless he stated to go into the Capitol to riot and engage in hooliganism, no, I don't believe
I asked
so.
if it was reasonably foreseeable that given the context that people would use force or threaten the use of force at the Capitol.
No, he's not a mind reader, and I
Okay,
don't believe you are either.
So it's your opinion that it was not reasonably foreseeable that violence would occur at the Capitol after his speech in that context.
No.
Okay, so then we disagree fundamentally on one of the elements, and so in your mind, he's already kind of exonerated from what I'm saying.
Well,
We
I
don't
mean,
agree
was
on
he not impeached for this very act by
That's
Congress?
irrelevant.
What do you mean?
Why
It's
do you think that's
irrelevant?
relevant? Does
Well,
any part of my definition require impeachment?
Well, we're trying to determine whether or not this occurred. The House of Representatives impeached him, and they were not able to depose him prior to or after the event.
I'm going to ask again. Does any part of my definition of engaging in an insurrection require impeachment?
That's not what I said. But we're trying to determine whether or not he said the things that
do
you're
you or do
claiming.
you not agree that my definition does not include deference to findings?
I agree to that. No, I don't dispute
So
or disagree with
then
your
you would
definition.
then you would understand
But
why
we're trying to ascertain what exactly he said specifically that would incite somebody to cause damage to this building.
I just incorporated by reference the entirety of his speech. So you agree that I have identified text and words that he's used.
No, you didn't.
That would incite
you said
people.
you referenced his speech, but you didn't elucidate the exact words that he used that would incite a riot or hooliganism or violence of any sort. I mean, again, this is the heart of the issue with Destiny, because he legitimately believes that an insurrection occurred, and that gives him, I guess, permission in his mind to be a total jerk to these families.
There's no doubt that an insurrection occurred. Right now, we're just talking about Trump's engagement. So why don't we just start with the insurrection part first, and then we can talk about whether he engaged in it? Because if you don't even agree there's an insurrection, then what's the point about talking about Trump's role in something that doesn't exist? Fair?
Okay, kind of fair. Sure.
So what part about this definition isn't fulfilled by what took place, even if not by Trump, by at least one person on January 6th?
Well,
at least two people.
Yeah, well, we've had multiple instances where the Capitol has been stormed by a group of rowdy individuals for one reason or another. One example would be the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation. People were doing the exact same thing that transpired there.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's an unequal application of the law.
Hang on a second. Does any part of my definition require there to be unequal application or reference unequal application?
Well,
it
no,
could be
but
the case.
you can clearly see that we have two events at different moments in time, but the activities that occurred on both of these days were relatively the same. But for one group, the heavy-handed response by the government, insists upon putting people in prison in D.C. and essentially torturing them. But anybody else engaged in that same activity, they were given, misdemeanors, or they were let go, or they were given small fines. And you're a law guy, so the Supreme Court has come to the decision of what? I mean, they were the one or two rulings recently regarding the way that these cases were tried and prosecuted. And, again, to suggest that there was insurrection.
Do you agree that whether or not people were punished appropriately or disproportionately, or whether or not the Supreme Court ruled one way or the other on various aspects related to punishment and charging decisions, that all of that is irrelevant?
No, not necessarily. I mean, because to suggest that an insurrection occurred would also suggest that the individuals involved in said insurrection would be engaged in treason and all sorts of other heinous crimes. And
we're going to come back. We have to come back to the definition. So, do you agree with this definition or not? The definition doesn't say, and they were treated appropriately. The definition doesn't say, and incorporate by reference the standard for treason. The definition doesn't say, and they were tortured in different places. The definition is, as I stated, an insurrection is a public use of force or threat of force by a group of people to hinder or prevent execution of the Constitution of the United States. We can either agree on that definition or disagree with it. But if you're going to reference things that aren't entailed by that definition, then it's not relevant.
Well, based on your view and based on what the Supreme Court recently ruled,
do you agree with that definition or not? Do you
still stand by the insurrection claims?
Wait, do you agree with my definition or not?
If it transpired the way that you suggested, sure.
No, whether it transpired one way or the other isn't the question. I'm asking you about a definition. The definition I gave you a couple times now, that doesn't relate to any specific events. That's just a definition that's kind of on a blank page that doesn't necessarily require any specific events.
Well, but still, dude, there's events and there are things happening around the core claim that you're making that an insurrection occurred.
We can get
But
to them
you want to
once
get
you
hung
agree.
up on this definition, and I want to have a conversation.
Sorry. If we can't agree on a definition of insurrection, how can we have this conversation?
I am telling you, you read off a scholarly definition of insurrection using force. You know, what was it? What else did you say? Force and what?
Sorry,
else?
I've moved on. So, don't you agree that we need to agree on a definition to have a conversation about what insurrection means?
Sure.
Okay, so then I can't move on to other matters tangential to the insurrection or the alleged insurrection until we agree on a definition. Okay. You can disagree with the definition and say it'll be too broad, but then you have to fight me on the definition. Otherwise, or like you have to say an insurrection is only when there's a impeachment and removal.
That's not what I said.
Or you have to say an insurrection. I'm not saying that you said that, but I'm saying is, you know, if part of your definition is an insurrection only occurs if people are treated fairly, or an insurrection, it's only an insurrection if afterwards they're not tortured or something like that, then we can have a conversation about those elements. But again, we need to agree on what a definition is. Yeah,
no, certainly. And like I said, I'm not disagreeing with what you were saying earlier, but we're trying to get to the heart of the matter is, you know, what specifically in your mind, what specifically happened to bring you to the conclusion that an insurrection occurred on January 6th?
Well, I look at the definition and I apply it to the facts. So one, was there a public use of force or threat of force? You agree that there was, right?
In what way? Can you give me an example of this public use of force?
Yeah. So do you agree, first of all, that this was public?
Sure.
Okay. Do you agree that force was used on January 6th by individuals in the crowd?
Yeah, including DC law enforcement, DC police.
Okay. Sure, but also by protesters. They used force, correct? At least some of them.
Yeah.
Okay, so you agree, therefore, that on January 6th, there was a public use of force, correct?
Correct.
You also agree, don't you, that it was by a group of people, not just one?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Do you believe it was for the purpose of hindering or preventing execution of the Constitution of the United States?
Well, I mean, this is where it gets interesting, because what the representatives were doing was bringing forth evidence of irregularities and issues with the election of 2020. And they were going to decide whether or not they were going to certify that election. Because President Trump, as we went round and round, exhausted all of his options, and he was denied for one reason or another. And this is it. It doesn't make any sense that President Trump would want this process interrupted. It doesn't make any sense that his loyal supporters would deliberately go against his wishes, most of whom were in front of him when he was finishing up his speech. They weren't even there at the Capitol. There were already individuals present outside the Capitol, you know, conducting their hooliganism prior to that event being, prior to the speech being finished. So when you're suggesting that President Trump instigated it or caused it or whatever verbiage you want to use, I'm trying to ask, what exactly was it that he specifically did or said that would make a mob that isn't even before him to do this? Because I have a fundamentally different view than you do as to what transpired that day. It does appear that there were actors involved that were not aligned with President Trump, that were, you know, that they were antithetical to what was, what was supposed to happen, and they wanted to put a stop to it. If you want to say that's an insurrection, sure, but those people were not necessarily held accountable. You know, one great example would be Ray Epps. You know, this individual was on FBI's most wanted list, and then he was removed immediately. This guy is on video calling for people to storm that building. This isn't in dispute. This isn't a conspiracy theory. And for whatever reason, this is the only individual that was defended by Democratic members of Congress. And And he was given a slap on the wrist when we are told by people like you that these are terrorists, they're insurrectionists, they hate democracy, they're fascists or racists or all these awful things. But again, we have two competing events where the exact same thing happened, but only one group is going to be categorized as insurrectionist and violent, but the other one isn't. And in my estimation, it's because of their personally held beliefs. And I'm led to believe, or at least the regime media is suggesting that I'm supposed to believe that President Trump somehow instigated this event. And I don't see tangible, concrete evidence for that, really. Him saying that the election was bullshit, that it was rigged, and that he's not going to concede until the end, yada, yada, yada. He has every right to contest the election. He has every right not to concede. He has every right to exhaust every remedy at his disposal. And I think he did that honorably. And again, this guy conceded. President Trump conceded. And people want to, decry violence and whatnot. The only people that were murdered that day, I forget the elderly woman's name, and of course, Ashley Babbitt. And then I think another elderly gentleman or middle-aged gentleman had a medical episode and he kind of just died. But, if I'm supposed to believe that this is an insurrection, again, I don't personally see it, man. And because of this kind of rhetoric, people like yourself, they think that gives them carte blanche to mock the death of firemen, to mock the severe injuries of people who are shot at political rallies. I mean, this just happened. And this moment in time, the Democratic Party is calling for unity. Why? They've been calling us terrorists. They've been calling us fascists. They've been calling us racist. And we're one of the most lied about people in American history. So when you say like this is an insurrection, I mean, I don't know if you genuinely believe that, but like you're a smart guy, you're articulate, and I respect you for coming on here. I didn't appreciate the ad homs. I don't know why people feel the need to do that, but like you can't possibly believe like this is some kind of like democracy ending event. Like, come on, man. Let me hear what you have to say. I'm curious.
Okay. Amazing. Okay. So this is what I have to say. First of all, thank you so much for saying everything you said. I really appreciate you taking the time to say all that. Do you believe that the individuals who used force that day were trying to hinder or prevent the execution of the Constitution of the United States?
I think some might have, but the bulk of them, not necessarily. And I believe the Supreme Court shares that worldview. A lot of those convictions, a lot of these prosecutions, they're under severe scrutiny because of the way that they've been handled. Again, we have an uneven application of the law. For whatever reason, President Trump's genuine supporters, not people engaged in legitimate hooliganism, who, by the way, should be punished. You can't be going into buildings and starting shit. Again, we can agree to that. Bad people doing bad things should be punished. But, the punishment needs to be just, and the application of the law needs to be equal. So when we have, Antifa or BLM trying to storm the front lawn of the White House, or when we have them trying to disrupt the confirmation of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, or at least at the time the candidate Kavanaugh, let's have some consistency. If it's just a slap on the wrist for these, little protesters, okay, well, let's treat the Trump supporters the same exact way.
Yeah, so you think at least some individuals were using force to prevent or hinder the execution of the Constitution.
Yeah, like
is that right?
Ray Epps. And for whatever reason, he was protected by the FBI. He was on the most wanted list, and he was removed. The guy was literally being called a Fed to his face. And why was this guy protected for so long? Why did he not receive the severe punishment that a lot of President Trump's enthusiastic supporters did? Most of whom were just meandering around the Capitol. Like, come on, man. You've seen the videos. If you looked into it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can't look at the events that transpired and be like, yeah, this is fine. The punishment these people received, the treatment they received is fine.
Yeah, so I'm just focused on one thing, right? I feel, and you tell me what you think about this. I feel like your mind is going to a lot of different places. I'm looking at a definition. And that definition is one that we're talking about. We're talking about what is an insurrection and whether certain things categorize themselves as an insurrection.
Yeah, but
so
there's a lot more. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, say more.
Yeah, but there's a lot more going on than just one definition, one specific act. We can't just fixate on just one thing because there's many threads to the story that need to be tied together, or none of this makes any sense to anybody listening.
Yeah, but like we're you want to bring in all these other different factors. You want to talk about Ray Epps. You want to talk about all these kind of important and like highly interesting things about January 6th.
All those all those facts are germane to what we're talking about. The underlying issue of so-called insurrection. Is that not, because I'm not meandering in crazy Loontown. Like, there were a lot of things that transpired on that day.
Not meandering in Crazy Loontown?
Nah.
You don't think you're meandering a little bit in Crazy Loontown a little bit?
No, not at all. I mean, if I'm going around saying like, oh, it was the FBI or some other, nonsense, then maybe. But, there's between me and you and those listening, there's obviously zero closure with what transpired in the 2020 election. There's zero closure as to what transpired during January 6th and even after the fact. And it's important to talk about this stuff honestly, because it's not just like one definition, which is important. And again, I'm not even disputing what you're saying. I'm not fighting you on that. I agree with you, but I'm also asking for specifics, and you're not really giving me one, man. You're trying to suggest that President Trump's words at a speech somehow impacted the actions of individuals that were already at the Capitol when he was far away from it. And again, what words did he use to incite this insurrection? No one has been able to state clearly what that is, and it's important because, again, like, I was a Bernie bro, and I'll defend anybody's, like, even Destiny. Like, I don't want Destiny to be banned. I fucking hate what he says. I think very little of him. People have read what I said about him. And if it was not you and it was him, we would be having this conversation and I would be acting the exact same way. But I just want the same treatment. I want that same courtesy extended to myself because, again, the topic of unity is really what's at the heart of what Willie Mack was saying and what Destiny is doing. How am I supposed to unify with people who believe that I am a terrorist, that I am a racist, that I'm all these awful things? How am I supposed to unify with people who have been just smearing and maligning my people, saying we're all these awful things? Like, I mean, dude, like, during I think it was 2017 or 2018, the modern left was wanting to burn down a school with Catholic kids inside of it over a lie, over a hoax. People wanted to have Kyle Rittenhouse raped while he was in jail, awaiting bail, because of a hoax, because of a lie. Jussie Smollett endangered people like me by pretending that he was attacked by violent racists. Althea Bernstein did the exact same thing during the BLM riots. I could go on. There is a whole slew of slander and dishonesty against people like to stop the Asian hate. People wanted to blame Trump supporters for all this violent, bigoted, racist attacks against Asian Americans, which is disgusting and deplorable. But I was blamed for it. And now there were individuals that were present at the Capitol. And because of the hysteria, because of the lies that are already attached to these people, they were mistreated. They were literally tortured. I would pull up the images of it, but I would probably get banned. So when people say insurrection, how? Really?
You think you're meandering a little bit?
Like I said, I'm tying everything together because we're the most lied about group in all of American history. I genuinely believe that. There is no other group that has been lied about this much besides people who support President Trump. Unless you can name one, I'm open to it. I'm open to it.
The Jews.
Well, I don't know about that. They're a protected class, man. I mean, people go after them. People say anti-Semitic things. They are punished accordingly. Regardless of what anybody agrees, whether you agree with that or not, that's what happens. But you can run up to a Trump supporter in public. You can steal their hat. You can spit on them. You can carjack them, all of which is on video. I look at the political violence that has occurred throughout Trump's presidency and even just the last few years during Biden's presidency. And it seems very skewed in only one way. We are on the receiving end of these attacks, including being called insurrectionists or insurrectionist adjacent or whatever fancy words people like Vosh like to use. And because of it, people like Destiny, and it's not even just Destiny. If you look at Libs of TikTok's Twitter page, she's getting people fired in real time because they are cheering on people dying at Trump's rally in Pittsburgh or in Pennsylvania. Like, this is insane. You know, we're talking about cooling down temperatures. Why are we not saying, you know what? We need to reconcile our differences. We need to speak about these problems honestly. And we need to stop, or we need to start by telling the truth. We lied and we went along with lies. And as a result, people have died and been gravely injured. And now it is really, really dangerous to be somebody like myself. I can't wear a MAGA hat. I can't openly support President Trump without fear of retribution, without fear of grave bodily injury to myself. I mean, where are the Hillary Clinton supporters getting their asses kicked? Where are the Biden supporters getting their asses kicked, getting shot at or ruthlessly murdered over political differences? I see a lot of fake hate crimes levied at us. I'll let you go.
Yeah. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Listen, I'm going to step back for a second, okay?
Okay.
How can I possibly have a conversation with you in this moment if basically every time you open your mouth, you could be talking about anything next, right? You just talked about Kyle Rittenhouse getting raped, I think you said?
They were accused. There were people who were organizing a party to find him in jail and rape him. I was making an underlying point that we are being maligned and smeared. And I gave tangible, concrete evidence, statements. People can look up themselves. Like, this isn't a fucking lie. And the insurrection
what the fuck
stuff
is
is
you being
directly
maligned? What is whether you're maligned or, you know, your grievances and your victim? What the hell does that have to do with insurrection? I know you want to cry about, oh, you poor babies, you've been discriminated against, but like that has nothing to do with anything we're talking about.
Sure, it does.
What the hell does it have to do with anything?
It relates to the uneven application of the law regarding, you know, events
What
that
does
take place
the
at the Capitol.
uneven application? Sorry, what does the uneven application law have to do with whether or not something's an insurrection?
Well, again, you have not really demonstrated what exactly, how Trump exactly is responsible for this thing. You really haven't, man. I'm being completely honest with you. And you want to, like, when I ask you a question like state specifics, can you be specific? And you don't. You're just like, oh, well, the totality of the speech. Well, what in that speech would suggest that he wants an insurrection to occur? And also, how would that speech apply to people who weren't even present, who weren't even there in front of him? I feel like you're just saying this insurrection happened because of this deep-seated bias that you have. And I think that's completely legitimate. I'm not meandering, man. I'm just saying, like, these things are tied.
You think if I made a poll right now and asked if you were meandering, do you think
your
even
fans would certainly be sympathetic towards it? But
do you think that even maybe a majority of your fans would say maybe you're meandering?
I don't know. You guys, let me know in the chat.
I don't think I'm going out of a limb here to say maybe you've been a bit meandering.
Okay, well, let's. I asked you questions. You know what I asked about specifics.
I know.
Can you address that?
Yeah, I mean, I can address the laundry list of things you said.
No, what
I
Trump
don't believe
said about the insurrection.
Yes. So do you remember, like, maybe 25 minutes ago, I said, oh, you don't even agree there was an insurrection, so why don't we back up and see whether or not you agree there was an insurrection before we ask the question whether Trump had any role in it? Do you remember when we did that?
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm of the opinion that Trump did not have a role in it.
Whether you think he did or didn't, isn't the very first logical thing to do to establish if there even was a thing that he could have contributed to?
Well, what?
Isn't that logical?
For specifics. I'm asking you because you're the one that believes this claim. What did he do to contribute to this?
Did you understand that what I just said was, hey, before we analyze this, I have specific words. If you're afraid, if you think I don't have like specific words to reference, I do. I just don't take them in isolation, but I'm happy to reference specific words. But I thought we just had an agreement to, before we look at Trump's culpability in the insurrection, to first establish whether or not there is an insurrection.
Okay.
Didn't you remember us saying hey, that makes sense?
No, I get that. And we're obviously disagreeing here, but I'm listening to your point of view, dude. I want to understand your point of view. That's why I'm asking these questions.
Yeah. So point of view on what, right? Point of view on whether there is an insurrection or whether Trump engaged in it. I
Okay,
am proposing that we first establish whether or not there was an insurrection before we establish whether Trump has any role in it.
Okay, but you obviously believe that he does, correct?
Well, how do I prove that he has a role in something that you don't agree existed?
Well, this is why we're having a conversation, dude. Come on, man.
How do I? If I can't convince you that there was an insurrection, it's going to be impossible for me to convince you that Trump had a part in it.
Well, dude, if I was not able to be convinced, or if I was not interested in being convinced or having this conversation, I wouldn't be having it in the first place. We're supposed to be open here and engage in dialogue and open inquiry. So I'm giving you the floor, dude. I'm asking you in good faith why you believe what you do, because the beliefs matter, the ideas matter. And I mean, this is what I mean. You boil it down between two random people we don't know, one Republican, one Democrat. The Democrat would say an insurrection occurred, and the Republican would say, no, it's all phony baloney. I mean, you're in the camp that this thing transpired, and I'm trying to understand why you believe that. And then you're just.
I believe there was an insurrection. Do you agree with me or no?
I believe that you believe that there was. Yeah.
What's the point of this conversation if you're just going to say, yeah, you believe it? I mean, isn't the point of this to have a dispute and for us to like come to some consensus, hopefully? If you're just going to say, yes, I believe you believe it. I don't
know your point, dude. I don't know where you're coming from. It's why I'm asking.
You're trolling me. You're trolling me.
Dude, what do you mean?
Are you trolling me?
No. What are you talking? Pisco, you're being silly, bro. You're being ridiculous.
Are you fucking
That's why you're grinning. That's why you're grinning and being all fucking goofy. Come on, man. Come on, bro. I'm not asking you a hard question. Tell. I'm not even you act like I'm asking you to fucking do like trigonometry on the fucking stream on the fly. I'm not. Come on, bro. Come on, dude. Come on, man. Why is it stumping you, dude? I don't believe that an insurrection occurred. I have a different worldview than you. You do believe that. And I'm asking you why. What specifically led you down that path? And it isn't just one definition. Something that you saw or witnessed or maybe even experienced led you down this path of thought. I mean, I think I'm being fair here. Like, this shouldn't be difficult, dude. You're a smart guy. You're a fucking lawyer. And you're like tripped up over that. Let me tell you something really quick, kind of unrelated. I was having a debate with somebody about the validity of the moon landing. I was entertaining the fact that it's very likely that it was probably a fucking hoax. And I made a very simple statement. I said that the moon is incredibly far away. I think that's a reasonable thing to say. And the guy got tripped up over it. And now you're getting tripped up over a very simple question. What led you to believe that this was a legitimate insurrection?
Well, I go by the definition of insurrection.
Okay.
And that's what I was running through with you.
Okay.
And we had reached the last element, and then you started rambling about a bunch of shit.
Okay. So we're
that's
dialing it back. We're dialing it back.
Okay.
One step at a time.
Can we go back to the issue, or do you want to just say more stuff?
No, we're doing insurrection, correct?
I thought so.
Oh, so did I.
Okay. So you agree, first of all, that there was a public use of force on January 6th?
Yes, we've already established that.
And it was by a group of people?
Yes, we established that.
And do you believe at least some of the people who were using force that day, other than Ray Epps, were attempting to hinder or prevent execution of the Constitution of the United States?
Yeah.
Okay, so you agree, therefore, that there was an insurrection on January 6th. Fair?
Well, it depends who did it, There were people that were literally armed. There were people that were armed with firearms, and none of those people were brought to justice. People like Ray Epps were not brought to justice. Like I said, there's an uneven application of the law. When you have the courts in Washington, D.C. playing favorites or playing games with people's freedoms, that's a problem. That would suggest to me that this is probably not an insurrection if they don't even want to, treat all of the individuals that were present on that day the exact same. Why are you making these faces? You're being tripped up over like really simple stuff, man. Why are you you just want me to be like, yeah, man, the people were acting violently, therefore insurrection? Like, no, not necessarily, man. Not really, no. I'm engaged in like a thought exercise with you, and you're just really upset, it seems.
Are you fucking with me?
Why? No.
I don't know where we could go from here. How was your day?
It was good, man. It was good. Look, if
Yeah.
we're at a roadblock over this, do you want to move on to a different topic?
No.
You want to stay here? Oh, okay. Well, there you guys have it. Yeah, Pisco could not handle a very simple question. I don't believe I said anything that was fuck, I wasn't even recording. Tell him about the poop box right now. Oh my god. Yeah, well, there you guys have it. He couldn't handle very simple questions. Again, none of this was difficult to understand. I mean, guys, what did I say that was so fucking confusing? Dude, he was acting like my father. Can I get on the call? Yeah, Derek, get on the call. I don't care. Let me see. Let's see. Spencer, you can go ahead and get on the call too. Well, there you have it. Oh shit, never mind. I'm not even in Discord anymore. Discord does not work on my PC for whatever reason, so I can't even use it. Give me 1 second. See if I can try relaunching it one more time. Maybe it'll work. He just wanted to agree on the definition, but you couldn't get there. I did agree with the definition, dude. Like, I wasn't disputing what he was saying. He was being obtuse for no reason. I know, right? We didn't even get to do confessions with him. I know. We should have done that. But, you know, he was obviously getting really frustrated. I am pissed with you. Please watch this back after you go offline, buddy, if you weren't trolling. All right, peace out, Josh. Yeah. Again, he's a lawyer and you couldn't handle really simple questions. Like, it's not a difficult question. Like, what led you down that path to believe that? And it's not, I'll join after the Tarkov raid. Okay, cool. No, you were being obtuse. I wasn't being obtuse, dude. Like, everything I said was entirely related to what we were talking about. I mean, the underlying issues with what Destiny was saying is that he feels like it's permissible to engage in the kind of behavior that he did, wishing harm onto people, celebrating, you know, the deaths and all the suffering that went on during the Pennsylvania Trump rally. Mike Floyd, thanks, Mike Floyd. Yeah, I know. I mean, he was just being like, dude, I don't get it, man. Like, people just literally can't handle really simple questions. And that's honestly one of the biggest problems that I have with people on the modern left. And honestly, like, I didn't even want to fucking do a debate, to be honest. You know, like, he can't understand the point of view. Yes, you were stringing so many things together. Yeah, all of it was related, dude. All of it was related. You know, those people that were prosecuted by the government over the January 6th horseshit, like, they were tortured in prison. Like, that's not up for dispute. These people were mistreated. But other individuals who were engaged in the exact same activity weren't. And I'm led to believe that this was an insurrection. Not likely, dude. I mean, you guys are being deliberately, you know, you guys are being, like, ignorant of just really obvious shit. And I don't understand why. And again, he was getting so frustrated with my line of questioning and by the things that I was saying. He was, like, stroking his hair like an old man. You know, he was engaging in ad hom attacks. The only ones that would probably be okay is, like, when my buddy interrupted. And again, I told him not to. Again, I don't agree with dogpiling. But I don't have to engage in, you know, shifty attacks or you know, intellectual dishonesty to kind of win an argument or to get at the heart of what we're discussing. Let me see. Destiny brain rot? Yeah, probably. Dude, you were building a story as to why you think Jan 6 was supposedly being blown out of proportion by talking about the country since 2016. Well, dude, there were a lot of things that we were talking about. You know, the election was one of the things that led up to January 6th. The mistreatment of President Trump supporters also led and contributed to the events that took place on January 6th. Trump's actions regarding, you know, contesting the election, saying that it's bullshit, you know, contributed to what transpired on January 6th. People were protesting out in the streets because their speech was censored after the advent of the election. And he wants to pretend like none of that matters. Like, none of that is relevant. He just wants to be a fucking debate me bro and, you know, stick to one fucking definition when there's, like, so many things transpiring in real time. that's like, it's running parallel to everything that we've talked about. He was trolling for real. Don't worry. I refuse to think someone can't understand a simple line of questioning or logic. Thank you, Vishay. What do you do for a living? Well, right now I do electrical work and I also do accounting. We do free association logic here. Yay. What are you talking about, Derek? This is a ramble. Well, I'm just talking right now because the debater left. He cowered. It all might be related, but it doesn't further a factual argument against it being an insurrection. Well, again, he wasn't meeting, the threshold. When there's inconsistencies in the way that people were prosecuted for their behavior at that event, that's a problem for the insurrection claim. When the Supreme Court steps in and says, hey, the procedures for finding these people guilty, the way that the convictions came about was not up to snuff. That's a problem. That cuts right into the insurrection argument. If you don't agree with that, that's fine. Let's just agree to disagree. But he wanted to, act like a little child and, make goofy faces and just get all weird about it. Like, dude, it looked like he was peeing in his pants. He was getting frustrated because you sounded insane. I didn't say anything insane, dude. I was asking questions. Okay, so people who were charged with seditious conspiracy like Joe Biggs is just BS. Well, yeah, probably. You weren't asked questions. You were rambling. No, not really. I still think he was wearing eyeliner. He might have been. He usually wears glasses based on some of the streams I saw, but I don't know. Destiny is cringe. We can just ignore him. Yeah, I ignore him, dude. Like, again, I'm not really interested in talking with somebody like that. I asked Pisco to not be, a whiny baby and scream and get all hysterical. And of course he couldn't help himself. If he's a lawyer and this is how he conducts himself, that's a problem. I wouldn't trust that guy with anything, not even a traffic ticket. Frogs, you should debate Destiny. Why would I debate Destiny? He's just going to say something that's going to upset me, cheering on the deaths of these brave firefighters or cheering on the violence inflicted upon Trump supporters. This is literally his belief. I think it was just on Piers Morgan, and he said some other nonsense. Willie Mack was like, yeah, dude, he's completely unhinged. Oh, well, what do you do with somebody like that? He really might have been a Yankee, too. Destiny is garbage. Agreed. I can take Pisco's place if you want to drag me in. Sure. Let me see if I can get back on. Let me see if I can get back on Discord. All right. There it is. Oh shit! I got the wrong one. Whoops. Dude, I'm so unbelievably salty that my Discord just stopped working. I honestly don't even know what that is. All right. All right. No, don't full screen it. Oh man, there's so many people in the chat. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Destiny wouldn't be able to listen to 2 seconds of this guy. Dude, I can't listen to Destiny, bro. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have any respect for that guy. 1010 troll. Yeah, I ask questions and I get called a troll. Interesting. Let me see. You might have schizophrenia. You need to have a proper flow of thought. I do. It seems like Pisco is just not intelligent enough to follow. He can't weave multiple things into the discussion and fail to comprehend how they're all tied together. That's a him problem, not me. Well, Democrats do that definition all the time. Okay. Let's see. Pisco is much more patient. I don't know about that. Maybe. You should have talked about Rittenhouse being sexually hunted more. You refused to engage. I did engage. I complied in every way imaginable. I accommodated him and I respected the rules of engagement. He did not because he is a coward. Apparently think Pisco saw blood in the water and wanted some funny clips. Yeah, I would be more... Dude, send those clips over to me. He's just going to look like a jackass. There's nothing that I said that was incorrect. No, you have to watch this back. You look like a crazy fool. Okay. Yeah, a lot of leftists tend to say that. Just wanted to let you know, I thought it was really unfair of Pisco to bully someone with a learning impediment on the stream. Good on you for not backing down despite your hindrance. Thank you. It's irrelevant. You absolutely dominated that conversation. The left loves to make unsubstantiated claims. Thank you. Can you acknowledge in that convo that you didn't really have a back and forth talk? I tried. He didn't want to. I gave him the floor. I asked him, what exactly do you believe? What led you to believe the things that you claim? And I was disputing some of the stuff that he was saying, because there's inconsistencies in the claim that there was insurrection. and he just didn't want to address any of them. He literally didn't want to address any of them. He just wanted to defer back to that fucking definition. But if you disagree, then you can't really go any further. Well, I tried to get him to open up, but he was, clamoring up. He was really upset. He was really scared. I don't know. You agreed to every single defining part of an insurrection and then refused to acknowledge the end result, you bad-faced, spineless weasel. Oh, gosh. Ruthless. I am not a spineless weasel. Look, I don't disagree with the definition that he stated. I disagreed with, the underlying facts of what transpired that day that would lead him to believe that it was an insurrection. Like, he just doesn't get that. He didn't cower so much as you wouldn't meet him where the conversation was. I did meet him where the conversation was, man. I promise you I did. You said that you agreed there was an insurrection. No, not necessarily. Can you go a little deeper with that claim, please? Which one, Ant-Man? You didn't even listen. All you want to do is talk about what you believe. Well, I mean, that's really what the heart of this discussion was supposed to be about. It's beliefs. We both fundamentally believe different things. And we're supposed to, talk about it. The conversation should intersect at some point, and it unfortunately didn't. You were not able to have a conversation. You couldn't follow a single thought. No, I did. You guys are being delusional. What the fuck, man? Who put you guys under a spell? Let me see. Hold on, I'm going to bring this chat closer to me. I'm a effing pussy. All you did was ramble. No, I didn't. There was no conspiracy garbage. Just admit it. Oh, my God. Get a job. Oh, my God. You specifically agreed to a particular definition of insurrection. Yeah, and I didn't think the threshold was met. Plain and simple. You sounded like you were crying the entire time. We're talking to Pisco. You wish. I'm not a leftist. I don't do crying. Very brave of you to turn down the debate with Destiny because he would be too mean. Dude, it's not about like him being mean, bro. Like, I just don't really care to speak. If he wants to speak to me, he can reach out to me whenever he wants. The guy couldn't back up his points. People hate Trump for the dumbest reasons. Correct. You're salty because you absolutely bitched by Pisco. No, not at all. He's the one that left. Let's see. I'm delusional. Oh, my God. These are all just the same thing. Let's see. Bots are brigading you. Fucking Pisco loves Israel. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, he was teetering on some anti-Semitic stuff. I wasn't. I don't know why he brought them up. I wasn't trying to engage in that. You came in with good faith. He came in to win a debate. Yeah, like I just legitimately wanted to have a conversation. Like people want to hear why people believe what they believe. The beliefs matter. And to Pisco's point, like definitions matter. And I didn't disagree with what he was saying. I just disagreed with how he may have arrived at that conclusion. Like none of this is confusing. But I don't know. I mean, this is the unfortunate reality that we're resigned to. People want to believe that some spooky insurrection occurred, and I'm just like, how? Did you ask him if he would marry a porn star? I don't know, probably AC. It wouldn't surprise me at this point. I mean, if that's how he rolls. Let me see. Let me get back into the chat. Let me see. Turd, you're more than welcome to engage or join me. Let me see. Daldo, my mic is muted. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I finally just read that. Yeah. Sometimes the mixer just cuts out. You disagree that logically it was an insurrection. A debate with a debate bro is always going to be obnoxious. Yeah, guys, I apologize that it was this obnoxious. I had faith that he would be a little bit more intelligent. I had more faith that he would be, he would have a little bit of integrity, because he promised me that he would. But again, I can't control how overly emotional people can get. It's not my fault that people can't control themselves in a good faith conversation, which is ultimately what we're having. This is why the left rarely debates with the right, because all their points fall flat. Stupidest answer yet. Yeah, fair enough. Still in raid. Give me a moment. Take your time. Stadia Dispatch. Imagine having to deny facts that even Trump doesn't deny in order to have to revise your opinion. What facto? What am I denying? What am I denying? All these triggered blue hair, gender neutral, anti-Trumpers with TDS love to resort to ad hominem attacks. Yeah, I know. Dude, like you engage in ad hominem attacks, you lose. You engage in Godwin's law, you lose. I mean, that's just generally the rule. Absolute joke of a human being talking about integrity. How do I lack integrity? Facta, you have the floor. I'm reading what you're saying. Cope stream, damn. Let me see. Super chatted you for you asking if you would marry a Peace Star. Oh no, dude, I didn't see it, bro. The chat was moving too quickly. I would also be mad if I debated a person with 35 IQ. JT, you wish. Roto is in your Discord but doesn't know which channel to join. Let me see. Yeah, I'll move him. Rhoda, what's going on, man? You wanted to talk?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Hold, let me see. You're getting picked up. Say something.
Yeah. Hello. Hello.
All right, perfect. Yeah,
Testing.
what's going on, man? You're a subscriber of Pisco, or you've been listening in? What's your thoughts, man? Speak freely.
No. I just kind of happened by. So I kind of just wanted to. I think I know what Pisco was trying to do, but he wasn't really taking you very seriously. If you were watching his stream, he was kind of just playing music and listening to you ramble on. So I want to take you a little bit more seriously, and
Fair enough.
but I think I want to actually try to walk you down what I think he was trying to do and do it in a little bit better faith than he was.
Fair enough.
So I think the first thing he was trying to establish was, do we have a definition of insurrection that we agree on? Because if we don't have a definition that we even agree on, then what's the point of even trying to establish whether or not Trump uh, was partaking in an insurrection, right?
Yeah.
If we don't even agree
Yeah.
on what an insurrection is. So basically, I think it was something along the lines of, if you have a group of people that are using force or threatening force to, um, delay. I think he said something along the lines of the Constitution, something with the Constitution, but I think
Yeah.
what he was getting at was delaying the vote, right? Or
Yeah.
throwing out the vote or something
It
along
was a
those lines.
certification or the rejection of the election, and if that would have occurred, the states would end up deciding who the victor of the 2020 election is. Which, again, if you're a Trump
So
supporter, you don't want to do anything. You want to let the process play out, and that's it.
right. So I think going back to where you guys kind of agreed on was, I think you agreed that there were, multiple people there. There was force that was being used, and they
Correct.
were trying to, um, go against the having the vote certified, right? I think you agreed on all of those points.
Yeah.
So, and what was so I think at that point he said, okay, so then you agree there's an insurrection. Then what was your counter to that? Because I think you actually said you didn't agree, right?
Yeah, not necessarily. No, not with the facts that already exist. It's like, again, it doesn't make sense. First off, they weren't necessarily going to certify the election right there and then. What they were doing was debating the merits of the 2020 election. They were debating some of the facts that have been brought forth by people who were disputing the election and rejecting the claim that Biden won. And it makes zero sense that President Trump would want to disrupt that. It makes no sense that his loyal supporters would do that.
Well, whether or not it makes sense or not doesn't
Yeah, fair
have
enough. Yeah,
anything to
true.
do with whether or
Uh,
not something happened or not,
Hey,
right?
what's up?
So
What's up, guys? Sorry, I'm just gonna interject really quick, and then I gotta
You're
get
good.
back
You're
into my
good.
raid of Tarkov. No, if there was an insurrection, then why wasn't anyone charged with insurrection in the crowd? There you go. Case dismissed. Problem solved. The thing that I don't like about your buddy there, that he was, the guy that you follow there, is
Pisco.
he does the Pisco, is he does
Pisco, yeah.
he does the stupid lawyer game of, let me ask leading questions and I'm gonna get you to say what I want. That is literally what he was doing that whole debate, and why I jumped in the first place, because he was pulling that stupid bullshit. Pardon my French, and he doesn't know what happened in Arizona. He couldn't even answer a basic question of why does, rules
Can
for
I
thee, not for me,
can I
for
stop you?
Run Back versus Cyber Ninjas. Same thing.
Yeah, sorry. Can I stop you there?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, because I completely disagree with everything you just said. So, asking leading questions, there's nothing wrong with that. So whether or not,
Yeah, we're not in the court of
okay,
law.
so
I mean, if he wants to do
the
that, I
whole
don't really care. I'm
the
just
whole
not gonna fall
purpose of
for it.
establishing a definition and asking whether or not you agree is just to make sure if we're on the same page. And that's what, the leading questions were all for that. And I'm sure there have been court cases that you disagree with the outcome, correct?
Sure.
I
So
mean,
you
Yeah,
can say
but
that something
buddy,
happened, but I disagree with it.
yeah. So
so
we
let
we,
me.
we get the whole definition. Okay, this
So
is what we're hung up
whether or
on.
not people were charged with insurrection doesn't mean that there's an insurrection or not. If you think there's an insurrection and
I don't think there
everything met
was.
the definition of an insurrection, then
It didn't. I mean, if
Yeah,
there's an
no,
insurrection,
I get that, dude.
there would be armed
yeah, but
people inside the Capitol.
your counter to there not being an insurrection is that no one was charged, not that
No, no,
everything that
no,
needs to
not
be
only
there for an
that.
insurrection to happen. happened. You're basically saying you agree that everything that's required for an insurrection happened,
I
but just
disagree with
because
that.
some people weren't charged. Okay, well that
I disagree
not
with
you,
that.
but Frog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said you agreed with everything, right?
Yeah, up until a point. Again, like what we disagree on is whether or not like a legitimate insurrection occurred. And I asked him, like, beyond this definition, like what else is there? You know, because he mentioned, you know, Trump's rhetoric. He mentioned the speech, and I'm like, how is the speech germane to this insurrection when he didn't call for violence, when he wasn't using violently charged rhetoric, when the people who were beginning to act, you know, foolishly, they didn't even hear the speech, or they weren't even standing there before Trump. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. And he was getting hung up on that and freaking out. And
I know
again, he
people
wanted
that
to
were
do
there
like
that
the
day.
debate me, bro, lawyerly thing. And it's just like, it's not going to work on me, man. You know? And like, dude, he was obviously like losing this because he was engaging in ad-hom attacks and other logical fallacies. And I came in good faith, and I was being fair and kind, and he could not extend that courtesy to me because, you know, he's just fundamentally wrong, and he knows it. I genuinely believe like he knows it. And when he was confronted with like, you know, a conflicting worldview, he couldn't handle it, because a lot of these liberals or these Democrats, you know, they just short circuit when simply being asked really easy questions. You know, like, what led you down to believe this? You know, if someone's like, well, what led you down to believe that there wasn't an insurrection, I can answer that clearly without any issues.
So let me wrap a bow on the insurrection thing, and then I'll try to satisfy. I'll just go ahead and jump over to the Trump stuff and try to satisfy
Yeah,
that.
go for it.
Can I ask a really quick question though? What's the
Yeah, go ahead.
difference between that and what happened on January 6th and a mostly peaceful protest?
What do you mean?
It's a pretty straightforward question. Why is what Blam Tifo did in raiding the Capitol, doing the Kavanaugh stuff, or that's not considered an insurrection, but January 6th it is?
Because I think in the definition of insurrection that Pisco is using, there's the part about subverting the Constitution.
Well,
And I don't think those other rights
I'm pretty
are
sure
referring
they
to
were, dude.
Were they?
Pretty sure they were. Okay, attacking courthouses, burning buildings, dude. I filmed that shit here in Phoenix.
What does that have to
man.
do with the Constitution?
An insurrection would imply wanting to overthrow government, would it not?
Yeah, I guess so.
So Blam Tifa going and attacking a bunch of buildings, that's not an insurrection. How?
Because
Using
it's
his
not
logic.
overthrowing. It's not overthrowing the government.
But they.
It's still a riot. It's still bad.
Oh,
I can tell you
okay.
that. Yeah, it's
Okay,
still bad.
so it was a riot. So January 6th
Yeah.
was a riot.
Yes, but the reason it's an insurrection is because of what it was trying to accomplish.
And what were they trying to accomplish then?
They were trying to delay the certification of the vote. That's what's being argued.
Okay, and was the vote delayed?
Did
they vote that day?
They did, but it was delayed.
Okay.
So, okay, Spencer, can you
Jamal,
wait, I don't want to lose our train of thought. I apologize, Spencer, but our friend here, he was gonna wrap the bow, right?
Yeah, go for it.
Do the bow. Speak freely, man.
Yeah, so this is what I'll say, and you can choose to agree or disagree. So
Okay.
if I say, what's your definition of a chair? And you say, a chair is something that you can sit on that has 4 legs. And then you point to a picture of a chair, and I say, well, my friend tells me that that's actually a stool. That's not an argument against your definition of a chair. That's not saying that it's not a chair. That's saying that I believe it to be something different. So what I'm trying to say with that is saying that, well, I believe it meets all the criteria for an insurrection, but people weren't charged with an insurrection has nothing to do with anything. That's just the bow I'm going to wrap on that. We can agree to disagree, whatever.
Yeah.
Getting to the.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we're just gonna have to agree to disagree. I mean, I'm like reading the chat, and you know, I mean, everybody's just so animated about this. Yeah, Gustavo Sanchez, I know it's like so 2020, but you know, there's not a lot of closure around this. And again, the whole point of this was like Destiny was freaking out and attacking victims of a horrific political event, political violence, and he feels like he's justified in doing so because he believes an insurrection occurred, and the country is split on this. And I wanted to understand from somebody who should be seemingly intelligent enough to do so why he came to that conclusion. How did he come to that conclusion besides these definitions? And again,
So-
I wasn't even disagreeing with what he laid out, but when I asked for specifics, he didn't give me any. And I know, I was reading the chat, I know he's like, oh, I can give you some, but he never did. And I kept asking repeatedly, and he refused to do so. So yeah, I talked about other underlying issues that are directly related to what transpired on that day. And he just was not mature enough to have that conversation. He didn't have the stamina. He didn't have what it took. I don't know. He thought I was, trolling, but he was acting like my dad. When my dad does the exact same thing when he's like frustrated. He like does the whole like ruffling up his hair and covering his face, and and again, like I'm not a fucking lawyer. Like I don't necessarily debate people in real life, but he does if he is a lawyer. I mean, I don't know. I'm taking his word for it. And you're getting hung up on these really simple things. Like that's a problem.
Yeah. So are you familiar with the false elector scheme?
What's wrong
yeah,
about? Okay.
Yeah, vaguely. Like here's the thing though.
What do you find as a false elector though? Because remember in Hawaii they did send alternative electors and that was completely legal. But when you challenge a Democrat one ticket, then oh my God, it's it's insurrection or whatever the left is claiming.
Yeah, well, these electors were not certified by the states. That's what I mean by false electors.
Okay, well, it doesn't need to technically be per what the arguments
well,
have been.
well, if they aren't certified by the state, but they're claiming to be, then I would say
no. Okay, let me rephrase that. Sorry, I was in a battle in Tarkov. I don't have a full train of thought right now. There's alternate electors slant when there is a contest. That was the argument for that side getting standing to go to courts. Because remember, a lot of the claims were dismissed on latches. That's what they were doing because you had CISA, basically, I would argue, interfere in elections by going to state judges. This is what happened here in Arizona. And they were giving guidance to the judges on Russia disinformation, all this other stuff, right? Susan Spalding, that spook, that was going around doing that, doing the CISA stuff. So what I'm getting at here, man, is if there's a predeterminate outcome because of interference, how are they going to win a case? And the other thing
what does this have to do with the false electors?
So to get standing, though, that was the argument that was made is they had to send alternate electors. So it can be argued on January 6th, because that was the whole point of the January 6th date, is anytime there's a contest, that's when the legislative branch in the Senate, so the House and the Senate, would debate, and then if they found an issue, they would send it back to the states, and then the state would sort it out. But then,
so you understand. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having an alternate slate of electors. That's perfectly fine, as in the Hawaii example that you pointed out. This example, what I'm alleging happened and what is documented as happening is Trump got together a fake slate of electors that testified basically as being the official slate of electors, even though they were not certified by the state whatsoever.
And technically, to be fair, the state legislature
it's basically
is
fraud.
the one.
They're basically committing fraud.
And it's
no one really denies this. I don't think Trump even denies this.
I mean, again, you're going to have to look towards the Hawaii ruling where both electors were slate, and it's just going to be an argument in the courts from here on out. I don't think this is anything.
Yeah, well, the Hawaii one doesn't really. Yeah, the Hawaii. It doesn't match up, because I believe what I'm saying is I believe that states can have alternate slates of electors. There's nothing wrong with that. As in the Hawaii example, I believe that was a legitimate alternate slate of electors in that example. In this example with Trump, these slates of electors were fraudulent. They were not selected or certified by the states. They were saying that they were, but they were not. They were illegitimate. Do you understand the
I
difference?
I kind of
that
I
I'm-
understand the
Okay.
point or the side that you're coming from, but there's going to be a fundamental disagreement on whether or not those electors are viewed as lawful or not, and that's what is being argued right now because our state AG just went after a bunch of those people. Now, granted, our state AG also tried to intimidate a couple of the counties that wanted to do additional work before canvassing. So they have to do a canvass before they submit the, basically here are the results to the state. And our Attorney General Mays was threatening to jail people, and I believe she actually filed charges against some of the like county supervisors and stuff like that. So to say that, and this is the thing that pisses me off, to say, oh, we want election integrity, but don't question it. That's a lot
You
of
can
the.
question it.
No, you can't.
No, not
You get
Yeah,
told-
sure you
necessarily.
can. Yeah.
Well, then
Let's-
why
let's-
wouldn't the state AG allow them to do the canvassing? And
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, but I mean, I don't think any reasonable person out here is saying you can't question or take to court questions about the integrity of an election. I mean, they even had court cases regarding the election. They had audits, et cetera.
right,
Right.
and this is the thing that your boy was getting hung up on. Of also, why is it that Cyber Ninjas has to be 100% transparent while Runbeck doesn't? Right now, they're fighting to get observers into Runbeck, which is what controls our county elections here in Maricopa County. When I say controls, they're the ones that prints the ballots. They have a chain. They have basically a play within the chain of custody, right? And if there's no oversight, and that's why a lot of us on the election integrity side harp on the mail-in ballots, because if there's no oversight, there's no
Yeah, I don't.
observers. Then
Yeah, I don't yeah. Sorry, I'm just gonna cut you off because I don't disagree with anything you're saying. If you think something, investigate it more, take it to court. I don't care, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not obviously doing that. I've just reported on it and
Well, no, I mean,
watched it happen.
not you specifically. I just mean
okay,
in
wait,
general.
wait,
In
yeah,
general.
so I don't care about the
I get what you're
electors.
saying, though.
That shit's boring. And like, I'll leave people.
No.
I'll leave myself with this. Like, Van Jones is an accomplished legal expert, and he is a legit industry pro who worked at the White House. He worked for the White House for the administration that he did, and he came to the conclusion prior to the 2020 election in October that you can submit your own electors, that you can contest the election, that you're perfectly allowed to not concede if you feel the election was, not up to snuff. That's perfectly fine. None of that was up for dispute until fairly recently. And again, I'm
believe
using
so.
a far leftist source. Again, I don't necessarily agree with anything that Van Jones has to say, but on the legal merits, he's correct. People have a right to contest the election, and there's plenty of remedies and avenues
Yes.
to do so. It's just, it seems so meaningless at this point, because I'm reading the chat, and multiple people are saying that if I do not agree that there was an insurrection, that this is pointless. But why? There's people who do not believe the regime-approved narrative regarding what transpired on January 6th. There was a lot of really weird stuff that took place on January 6th, even prior to January 6th. And we're not supposed to question it. I'm supposed to just completely, cede all this ground. Like, how are we supposed to have a genuine good faith conversation when these rabid followers of
shadow campaign
Piscos are behaving like this?
So let me ask you a question real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I just want to make sure I understand. So were you asking in good faith, like, why, like, how could you possibly believe that there's an insurrection? Because I just don't know. Or do you actually already know all of the facts and you just don't agree with the facts?
Well, I'm not claiming to know all the facts. I mean, there's a lot of things that are unknown about what transpired on January 6th. Like, prior to January 6th,
Right, yeah, I'm sorry. When I say
planted bombs, and like, what's going on with that? Who
when
did
I say
this?
facts, I mean what's documented in like the J6 court docs right now.
Yeah, no, certainly. Yeah, no.
You can dispute what's documented, but I'm just saying, like, do you already know like the whole case and like what's been documented, and do you just disagree with it, or are you actually asking because you don't know?
Well, there's multiple cases, related to what transpired on January 6th. So we agreed that people were violent, people were there, people did things that they weren't supposed to. So We
That's
got that out
right.
of the way.
So,
Now,
That's
but
right.
then he says that.
but why were they rioting though?
Yeah, that's
Well-
a really great question, and in my estimation, it's kind of up for dispute. Who
I
was
can-
I don't think it is. I
instigating-
think they were rioting about the results of the election, right?
Do you want me to?
Is that really
can,
in dispute?
I can
No,
at least
wait,
provide a
wait,
third party.
Spencer,
claim.
fine, go ahead.
what-
Go ahead. What are you gonna
So
say?
Let me
having
actually
having-
let me just lay out the whole thing, and I can just tell you we can agree or disagree, but
Okay,
I can
fair,
just
yeah.
tell you
Go
this
ahead.
is what I understand, and this is why people would think this. Okay, so the alternate slate of electors we already talked about, that in Trump's documented plan, where he was going to submit this false slate that wasn't actually certified by the states, to try to get Pence to choose those electors instead of the actual slate of electors, so that he could win the presidency. And then when Pence decided not to go along with that plan, he basically, in his speech where before the people went up to the Capitol building, where he's saying, "You guys got to fight like hell, or we're gonna, you're gonna lose your country, and we need Pence to certify these electors." And then they go up there to try to stop the certification of the vote.
How
You
many
can
other
see
politicians have said fight like hell though?
that has nothing to do with
It-
what
it
I'm
does.
saying. In this context, is it in this context when they're
context.
saying it? Yes.
Okay,
So
so
I'm saying everything in this context. If you could see, I'm sure you could see how someone could see all of these things that have been documented laid out in front of them and say, "Oh, that seems like a pretty cut and dry insurrection to me," right?
then
Do you
those
agree?
people are retarded if they think that's what he meant.
Well,
Do you agree or disagree that he had a plot to basically,
I dis-
undermine the results of the
disagree.
election?
Well,
I
so-
disagree.
wait, Dispenser. Well, I mean, that's kind of where the disagreement really springs forth from, because in my estimation, in my personal belief, he had every right to contest the election, and people like Pisco's obviously has a differing worldview, and that's fine. And when we were getting to the point, getting to the underlying issue of insurrection, I bring up the fact that there's, like I said, uneven application of the law regarding people who were engaged in the exact same activity but at different times. Why? When they were engaged in the exact same activities, and not even that, but like the Supreme Court also came down and ruled that a lot of these convictions, a lot of the procedures that were utilized to get the convictions that they did, they're not really valid. They didn't do it right. These people were treated unfairly, and they were smeared and maligned, and I think that's important too. So if there's all these inconsistencies in the way that the law is applied, and the Supreme Court is saying that the convictions are not kosher, the procedure from the Washington D.C. government was not kosher, and that they need to go back to the drawing board, that kind of shoots down that there was an insurrection. And again, are we really supposed to believe a bunch of unarmed boomers are engaged in an insurrection, and they're going to overturn, they're going to take over the government or whatever crazy
Right.
nonsense people are stating? I just don't really believe that to be the case, and no sane person can honestly believe that. Joe
Dude.
Biden is saying that you don't need AR-15s, you need planes, and you need all tanks and stuff. It's like, well, none of them people had tanks or planes or guns even. And there were a few individuals who were on video with firearms, and not a single one of them were charged or convicted, and nobody knows who they are. Like the scaffolding guy, nobody knows who he is. Ray Epps, one of the primary instigators of this event, this guy was treated with kid gloves after there was so much pressure to hold him accountable, and he was on the FBI's most wanted list and then removed immediately. This happened in real time. This isn't a conspiracy. And again, if we're supposed to treat this like the worst thing that's ever happened in America, right next to 9/11, why did that happen? And I think these are excellent questions, and people should just speak honestly about it. When people say that President Trump incited an insurrection, well, what words did he use? Was he saying, "Go get those bastards," or anything to that effect? And the answer to that is obviously no. I
If he
asked him
said-
for
if-
examples, and he just short-circuited.
Well,
If he said storm the Capitol, I want you to stop the process, then yes, that would be an insurrection. But that didn't happen. And the fact remains that the only thing that I've seen in my lifetime that would be an insurrection was when Blam Tifa was trying to firebomb the state capitol and do all that shit over here in Arizona. So that would be more of an insurrection than the mostly peaceful protest that happened on January 6th.
Okay, so what's the... Well, I don't want to go back to the whole definition debate.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean,
No,
that's
it's
kind of
okay.
like what I'm starting to lean towards, because I feel like when each of us say insurrection, we're talking about different things,
well, I
right? I
mean,
think I'm more
yeah,
going with Pisco's definition,
I mean,
and I think
I
you're
think
going with something else.
I think what we're kind of applying here is there's a point in society nowadays, right, where if you are doing, and this is my opinion, if you're doing the bidding of the regime, you're sowing the chaos, then to their favor, then you're gonna get the kitty clubs. You're gonna get a slap on the wrist, kind of like how a lot of the people that were arrested with the riots with George Floyd and whatnot, they got slaps on the wrist compared to other incidents like January 6th, where it's like, oh, Republicans, toss them in jail. It's the justice is not blind there. That's the main problem. The second thing I'd bring up too is, this is all by design. We shouldn't be arguing back and forth about, oh my God, this, Republicans, Democrats, rah, just getting in each other's faces about this stuff. We need to be focused on what the idiots up top are doing and undermining our country. I think that would be better suited for discussion than debating over semantics on January 6th or whatnot. I think we really need to focus on the damage that's being done by politicians on both sides of the aisle.
To be fair, I'm not even making this a Republican or Democrat thing.
That's fair.
Even in regards to the quote unquote insurrection, I don't blame any of the people that were rioting at the Capitol. I squarely put the blame on Donald Trump, because those people were there. They're based off of something they were led to believe by Donald Trump.
Yep.
So I don't even necessarily blame them. I blame the leader.
And we see that there was no fencing up on part of the Capitol grounds, and
there were barricades.
okay, compare
Have you seen the? Have you?
Oh yeah, no, I've seen the I see the little barricades there. That's like what you put up at a concert, man. That's like nothing compared to those giant barriers they just brought in.
Does that make it okay to? Does that make it okay to go break in?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, then what's the point of saying that?
I'm not condoning anyone that actually engaged in violent acts. And I know people, because I've interviewed them who were there, and I've heard a whole different side of that story than what the propaganda Operation Mockingbird media would tell you about what happened on January 6th. And it's night and day difference. A lot of these guys were let in by law enforcement. Their security footage has come out on that now, so that's not in dispute. So how can it be an insurrection if you were given a guided tour of the Capitol that day and you were being peaceful? How is that an insurrection? Trespassing?
I can tell you that you're not
maybe.
going to. I can tell you how it's an insurrection, but you're not going to agree with my definition.
Because they delayed the vote. So should Jamal or whatever that guy's name is that pulled the fire alarm get charged with insurrection too?
It's the intent behind the riot, and it goes starting with the scheme to subvert the election, which started with the false slate of electors, to trying to pressure Pence to take those slates of electors instead of the actual slates of electors. And then once Pence said that he wasn't going to do that, that's what led to the riots.
So knowing how charged the situation was, because emotions were running high, when Trump asked the National Guard to be deployed.
I'm sorry. Before I'll let you finish, but before you go down that road, do you agree or disagree that if they were going up there to try to pressure Pence to take a false slate of electors and subvert the election, subvert the Constitution, you agree that would qualify as an insurrection?
I'd have to see the specific law that you're referring
I don't think so.
to be able to say your name.
Well,
can you cite the U.S. code for that, please?
If that's not
Spencer, look, he has every right to contest the election, and if they cannot agree to certify
Legally,
the election in the
yes.
U.S. Senate, it would be deferred to the states. In the states' legislature,
He
their
had
state
his
houses, they would get
chance
to
to
choose.
contest the election, and that time, came and went.
No, it didn't. No,
No,
he
not
Yeah,
dude,
yes,
necessarily.
it did.
No. What transpired was they were in the middle of debating the merits of the claim. They were listening to the grievances and listening to the evidence while the riot, the hooliganism transpired. And then after the fact, once the situation was de-escalated, once they cleared out the Capitol and they resumed their duties, then they went ahead and proceeded with certifying the election because nobody had any more patience for, the things that went on. And again, if you wanted to, hurt President Trump, if you wanted to hurt the process and you reject transparency in the election, then you want there to be a riot. You want there to be a disruption. And people were listening closely. People wanted to hear the evidence. And now I wanted the world to hear the evidence.
So-
and that just didn't happen. Unfortunately, that didn't happen.
So okay, so let me back up a little bit. So I think we're misunderstanding each other because I just realized you guys are saying contest the election, and I'm saying Trump was trying to get a false slate of electors in that weren't certified. What I mean by this, so I'm just gonna make it very clear, and I'll even flip the script to make it more clear. Let's say this
Okay.
next election, right? Biden Trump this next election, and Biden realizes, oh shit, I'm gonna lose like every state, so I'm going to submit a false slate of electors that weren't certified by the state. And I'm going to make Kamala accept these instead of the actual slates of electors. And even though I actually lost these states, Kamala is going to certify these electors that say, I actually won these states.
I'm gonna
Now,
stop
do
you
you
right
think
there.
that's,
Wait.
is that contesting or is that cheating?
Okay. Well, let me.
Is that subverting the Constitution or is that
They can't do that
contesting an
anymore,
election?
anyways, because of the rule change that they did right after January 6th.
Yeah,
They
Mitch
actually
McConnell
changed the rules.
passed a new law or new
Well,
resolution where that
that's
can't
nice, but
transpire.
in the context of the 2016 election, or I'm sorry, the 2020 election.
If I think I'm gonna probably be on the same wavelength as you here, I might not. Where I think it is the politician's right to contest elections. It is your right as a citizen
Okay.
to also
Yeah,
contest the election.
In your scenario,
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I understand what you're
Let
saying.
me entertain your thought exercise here. So let's pretend Biden was the president in 2020 and Mitch McConnell didn't institute that new rule where the vice president can't have all that crazy power or whatever. And all the states went to Trump and Biden was like, you know what, Kamala, we're going to contest this election. We're going to get our own electors. Biden would be within his rights to do that. And if they refused to certify the election and the process wasn't disrupted like it was in January 6th, it would defer to the states. It wouldn't be up to Biden at that point. It wouldn't be up to Kamala Harris anymore. The states would get to choose who the president is. The chances of them saying, "Well,
would it go back to the? I thought it would go back to the House. Would it?
Well,
Not?
no, I think I forget
no,
the
it goes to the
exact
state.
procedure.
It goes to the state houses. It goes to the state.
It goes to the state houses,
yeah.
to select electors. Or
Yeah, the
whatever.
House of
Okay,
Representatives
okay,
don't
so
get to
it's
do
similar.
that. I actually do have a video queued up from Van Jones. Again, I'm a Trump guy, obviously. I let my biases be known to everybody. And, I chose far leftist sources, to kind of illustrate my points. And Van Jones stated it very clearly. And again, this is a guy, he's an accomplished legal expert. He is an industry professional. This guy has literally worked in the White House. He's worked for very powerful administrations. Like this guy, while I disagree with him, he's not a dummy. And he's basically saying exactly what I'm saying. And President Trump's legal team, their whole legal theory was basically, it basically, was aligned with what he said at this TED Talk here. You know what? Let me go ahead and I'm going to share my screen so you can go ahead and watch. And we can watch this now. I'll speed it up really quickly because he kind of speaks slowly. And, just to illustrate a point, just because I know like the chat is like freaking out and like they're saying all this shit about me, which is fine. You guys are allowed to speak in any way that you want. Let me see, window projector share.
To
So wait,
comment,
hold
the
on, hold
comment in the chat.
on. So our friend here, can you see Roto?
Where's it at? Let me see.
It's I'm sharing my screen on Discord.
Let me see.
Let me see. Here we go. No, that's not it.
See.
I just I just address something in the chat really quick. The deep state shadow government pulled a coup against Trump by engaging in election interference. That was the other point that other buddy couldn't get past. In regards to the First Amendment issues, I won't derail the topic. We'll stay on this,
Yeah.
but
So
I just
I'm
wanted
gonna
to
put
answer that in the
TED
chat.
Talk, Van Jones, election 2020. Okay. So here we go. We're gonna speed this up. And you're watching Roto?
Yeah, I can see it on your YouTube.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and speed it up for everybody. So
all the different things in our Constitution that we never talk about.
All right, here
And
we
I've
go.
discovered some legal loopholes that shocked me, I guarantee will shock you, and could determine the way that the presidential election in 2020 turns out. For instance, did you know that under our Constitution, a presidential candidate could actually lose the popular vote, fail to get a majority in the Electoral College, refuse to concede, manipulate hidden mechanisms in our government, and still get sworn in as the President of the United States of America? That's a true fact. I know it sounds like some crazy House of Cards episode, and I wish it was, because then we could just change the channel. But I just described to you a real world, real life possibility that could occur this year, the year I'm talking, in 2020, or in some other year if we don't fix some of these glitches in our system. So if you think, though, that the American people's choice in a U.S. presidential election should actually be sworn in to become president of the United States, please pay attention to this talk. I'm going to teach you how to stop a coup. Okay? Now, where to begin? All right, how about this? It turns out that one of the main safeguards of U.S. democracy is not in the Constitution at all. It's not in the law at all. It's actually just a little tradition. It's a little custom. And yet, this one voluntary gesture is one of the main reasons that you almost never have riots and bloodshed and strife after a U.S. election. What I'm talking about is a concession speech. Okay, it's ironic. It's the one speech no presidential candidate ever wants to give, and yet it is that public address that is most important for the health and the well-being of our nation.
yes, Alcathos. Yeah, this is actually proof that he was, whether it was right. Again, that's not or okay as you suggest. Like it doesn't matter. But legal, yes, he had every right to contest the election.
It's that speech, when a presidential contender gives it, it's
Wait,
after
so
the advisors come and the media tells them,
Yeah.
look, you're not going
Because this video starts out with Van Jones saying, so this is how this is what we need to do to stop a coup going forward.
Yeah,
So,
he gets to that at the end. He gets to that at the end, and it's
So-
basically like give money to like Democrats and go out on the street and protest, which is again what Trump was suggesting people do. It's like let your voices be heard patriotically. Go and march patriotically. He didn't use like violently charged language, and he wasn't suggesting to or even directly stating that his followers should engage in illegality. That just didn't happen.
Yeah,
Right.
the other thing too is the Supreme Court actually just limited which defendants accused of allegedly taking part in the J6 Capitol riot could be charged by federal prosecutors for obstructing Congress. So that knocks off a few of those felony cases against those people. So
Yeah.
that would be the other thing too. Like these prosecutors are misapplying the law too for those people there that day. I mean, trespass charges, sure. Rioting, if they're actually rioting, yeah, but obstruction of Congress.
Yeah.
No.
Well, let's finish. We're
Wait,
getting through this
so-
quickly. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
go on, Roto.
just real quick. So, are we about to watch a video that's basically about to outline how you can do a coup? And is
It's
this
not
what
a
you guys
coup.
are defending? I,
that's
don't
what
understand.
that's where we're fundamentally disagreeing on it, because I don't believe this is a coup. Because if you
Okay.
have legitimate concerns or grievances about the process in which the election took place, you have every right to contest it. Like,
Yes,
that's
I don't disagree.
like,
but do you
like, if this
understand
happened
that if-
to sorry, go on.
Do you understand that in my mind, if you take a slate of electors that wasn't actually certified by the state, that has a different result for that state than what actually happened, and say, hey, this is the actual slate of electors, take these, Do you understand how, in my mind, that's not contesting an election? That's
Yeah,
just
100%. You know,
subverting an election? Okay.
I'm very sympathetic towards that worldview, but when there are so many irregularities with the election and there's zero transparency in the process, you know, like it warrants contesting it. And again, these remedies exist. You know, like imagine like if you're accused of a crime and you know in your heart you didn't do it, there's no evidence to suggest that you did it, and you exercise and you exhaust every remedy possible, every avenue possible to get off the hook. You know, you're encouraged to do that. You know, those things are available for you, and you should take those measures to you know address your grievances, to address the wrongdoing. I mean, that's perfectly fine. And I mean, again, this is where we all like fundamentally disagree, you know, like our elections need to be transparent so we don't have another January 6th. They need to be transparent, and elections need to be called the day of the election, not a week or 2 or 3 weeks after the fact, which is what we're seeing. And even in a lot of these primaries that are taking place, like that's like a recipe for disaster. I mean, here, like I actually have this pulled up by the BBC. You know, signs that, vote rigging, how to spot telltale signs. You know, too many voters. I mean, in certain places, we saw an influx of voters showing up in places where they don't belong. You know, like nursing homes. When you see like a crazy influx of nursing home votes, that's a problem, man. And again, the way to remedy that is to recanvass the ballots. You know, audit the vote. You know. That's it. But there were so many blockages in doing so. And that is why there's so many people who do not believe that the election in 2020 was legitimate. You know, what else do we have? High turnout in specific areas, which is basically kind of the same thing. Large numbers of invalid votes. I mean, that was the AZ audit, which is the only state where they actually did somewhat of a meaningful audit. Even though the scope was small, there were signatures that just didn't. They were literally invalid signatures. I mean,
well, and the problem is, and I'll just interrupt you there, Gio, is the problem is once the ballot is separated from the envelope, it's in the system. So there is no way to audit past that point because the ballot is secret.
Yeah,
right?
more votes than
You don't know what ballot was attached to that signature mismatch if you go throughout that whole audit process and you find, well, like 20,000 votes were had mismatching signature, or 20,000 ballot envelopes had mismatching
so here's
signatures.
another one. Delay in announcing the results. Like again, like counting votes, counting pieces of paper, you know, like it shouldn't take weeks or days. It should take one day, one night. We used to do that. Our elections were literally like this prior to 2020, and that's a bygone era at this point.
And that's not even accounting the federal-only ballot here in Arizona, which technically non-citizens can vote in. And all the leftist grifters, I argue with frickin' what's his face from ABC all the time, Garrett Archer. Like I argue with him on Twitter all the time, and it's like, he always just fucking gaslights this. Anytime you talk about election integrity, it's immediate gaslight. This dude can't even tell me what a freaking air gap network is. And spoilers, Maricopa County doesn't have one because they're connected from wherever their polling site is through whatever the ISPs, potentially multiple ISPs, to Maricopa County server. That's not an air gap per definition. But then they grift and say, well, our network is air gap. No, bitch, you're connected to the whatever local network is, and then you're connected to your servers. Come on now. So the fact that they're saying, well, you know, everything was secure. We did our LNL testing. Give me a break.
Wait, did you guys, I don't remember, did you guys agree with Pisco that this was the most scrutinized election in probably U.S. history?
I was off the call by then, but I think he did.
People scrutinizing it, yes, but, you know, it's probably the most contentious election in American history, perhaps. But getting the remedies necessary to address the problems, absolutely not. You know, absolutely not. And again, like contesting elections and demanding signature verification, it's the most American thing ever. There was a former president, Barack Obama, when he was a state senator, when he was running for state senate, he was a community organizer at the time. I just want to read this part because it's incredibly important. All right, so that was Chicago politics. Let's see. Let's see. All right. All right, here we go. In his first race for office, seeking a state Senate seat on the Chicago's gritty South Side in 1996, Obama effectively used election rules to eliminate his Democratic competition. As a community organizer, he had helped register thousands of voters. But when it came time to run for office, he employed Chicago rules to invalidate the voting petition signatures of 3 of his challengers. Obama's past battles, blah, blah, blah. The move denied each of them, including the incumbent Alice Palmer, a longtime Chicago activist, a place on the ballot. It cleared the way for Obama to run unopposed on the Democratic ticket in a heavily Democratic district. So when people are like, oh, well, this is unheard of, this is unprecedented. No, not at all. Like, people are supposed to do this. This is legitimate. If the petitions are bullshit, if the signatures are bullshit, President Obama or Senate candidate Obama had every right to contest it and exercise all legal avenues. And he did, and he won as a result. Let me show you guys another recent example of this happening. So Democrats file suit claiming Woodhouse recall petition signatures are invalid. I'm actually very familiar with this election effort. I actually worked on this campaign. The Democratic Party battling...
and of course, Mark Elias.
Yeah, of course, yeah, Mark Elias came... Well, see, that's the thing. Like, Joyce Woodhouse is a popular congresswoman. She's a Democrat. And Mark Elias was like, oh my God, they got the signatures. And he showed up, and signatures were invalid. There were some serious fucking irregularities with this campaign. This was a private campaign from some rich asshole in Texas. I don't want to get too into it because I'll fucking get in trouble. But how do I fucking say this without getting in trouble? Like, you're incentivized on certain campaigns to collect as many signatures as humanly possible. And like, when I say incentivized, like, they'll pay you a lot of money. So you have your salary or your base pay, and then you get bonuses depending on how many signatures you get. There were people making a lot of money on this campaign. Now, I know the area. I live out here. And Joyce Woodhouse did not lose. She was, first off, she didn't get recalled. And there's just no fucking way that some of these people were getting crazy amount of signatures. Mark Elias found that they were illegitimate. I mean, right here in this article, let me see. The lawsuit filed Monday by Democratic Party attorney Mark Elias claims more than 3,000 of the signatures submitted in the recall effort came from people who are not registered to vote in Senate District 5. They did not vote in 2016 or are not registered to vote at all. That's a fucking problem, dude. That's a big fucking problem. And again, these irregularities, they don't just exist in these types of campaigns. They existed in all throughout 2020. I mean, even California, which we didn't really talk about, but like, California's got some serious problems with these ballots. And again, like, all I ask is for people to be reasonable and to really, like, step out of your comfort zone and examine things through a critical lens. And again, like, everyone's just like, oh, well, it's insurrection, you know, fuck Trump, and all these people are whiny crybabies. You know, there's no legitimacy to these claims. There's plenty of legitimacy to these claims, and Pisco was just like not willing to entertain any of it, you know. And you know, it's like, he just, like, I have core philosophical beliefs about the government always being guilty, and the burden of proof is always on them. Even if a regular citizen makes a claim, the government has to be accountable to people. They have to answer to people. How are they spending our money? What are they doing with the military? What is going on with the elections? Who really won? People are saying, well, prove that, you know, Trump was, you know, the 2020 election was rigged. Well, why don't you prove that Biden won? You know, Biden lost Ohio, Iowa, and Florida.
We already did. We counted the votes. We proved it.
Well, no, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Counting the votes is one thing, but addressing grievances and irregularities is another. And that just didn't happen.
So going back to what I was trying to get at with the scrutinized thing is, I mean, we've had audits. You can argue whether they're sufficient or not. We've had, what was it, like 60-something court cases that didn't go anywhere. It just feels like if there was some sort of substantial evidence that there was, you know, widespread fraud or, you know, something that we would have seen. It feels like...
It exists, man.
Let's talk about what Tim Pool reported on in regards to the feds basically trying to register voters and these being like tagged. And I think it was Texas that was like, oh yeah, no, we never sent those requests in. for verifying voters, where they're verifying social security number. So when you couple that with the
That
fact
sounds illegal.
that
Is that illegal?
I don't know the specifics. I'd have to pull up the article. I'm just going off brief memory here of what he reported on. Let me actually look at Twitter. I could probably bookmarked it. Give me a second. But in any case, I mean, that's the biggest concern I think right now, with which a lot of people have, is because how many millions of illegals has Biden flown into the country, and then these guys are getting temporary work status, right? Which they're given then a social security number. Now they're also been given forms of, hey, this is how you go register to vote. You don't think there's going to be people now illegally voting because of this, and once it's too late, they're going to say, oh, sorry. I mean, and this kind of goes to like the latches argument. I'll just toss a hypothetical out there for you. So if, let's just say they got to the point where the court's like, yeah, we agree with you, but if you would have tossed in electors, well, since you didn't submit your own electors, I can't give you this. So it's not fairly stacked against MAGA right now. I'll just put it that way, where you had CISA basically coach the courts out here in Arizona, and you had the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court basically sent out a memo on the stuff. So you're telling me that these cases are handled fairly, and not you specifically. Pesco or whatever his name is was arguing that, oh, well, everything was challenged already in courts, but was it? I mean, it went to the appeals court, and then they had to kick it back down to lower courts several times now, and it's still ongoing. But the benefit to all this too is we are seeing more information. The problem is the counties have been stonewalling it and gaslighting at every step of the way. So I don't like Stephen Richer. I think he's a commie. I think he's a member of the deep state.
Yeah.
But that's me.
I don't even know who that is, but
My county recorder out here in Maricopa County.
I mean, fair. Maybe he is. So I'm just gonna ramble off a few things, and I'm probably have to head out because it's way past my bedtime.
No, I feel you.
So, first things first. Whenever you're bringing up stuff that's I don't know, that sounds shady, or you think people are doing something illegal that that are people that are Democrats or on the left or whatever, my response to that is always going to be, we'll take it to court, arrest them if they did something bad, whatever. I don't care, So whenever you're bringing up like, oh, the FBI was doing something shady, I don't care. Take them to court, arrest them, whatever, if that's the case. Going back to the election, just here's my general thoughts. Is so
Posted in politics, by the way.
Okay. So in 2016, when Hillary lost and people were freaking out about Russiagate and using that as an excuse to, oh, well, Hillary lost because of Russia. While I do believe that there was evidence that Russia did have some sort of interference in our election, I don't think it was big enough to actually, determine the outcome in a way that was meaningful that went against Hillary. I think there's a lot of other factors that went into it that made her lose. And then, people whined about it and etc. I think that same thing's basically happening now with 2020. But to be fair, I don't blame you guys. I don't really blame anyone on the right. This is coming straight from Donald Trump. He's telling you guys the election was stolen. The election was rigged. He said the election was going to be rigged for several months leading up to the election. So that he could, try to contest it or
he saw the writing on the wall based on what was going on in the States.
Or he's just lying. That's a possible outcome too.
I mean, Clinton was definitely lying with the Steele dossier.
Whatever,
That was proven false, man. So, I mean, same thing with the 51 former intelligence agents that said Biden's laptop was fake.
Not to cut you off, respectfully to cut you off.
Oh,
I'm not saying whatever because I disagree with you. I'm saying whatever because I'm going back to my first statement where if you're saying someone on the left did something bad, take them to court, lock them up. I don't care. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I think happened with 2020 is people are just upset. The leader of the Republican Party is basically telling everyone, oh, the election is rigged. So what's going to happen? People are going to think the election was rigged. Don't blame people on the right. Don't blame you guys. it's all Trump. And I believe if there is better leadership in the Republican Party and it was someone else other than him, that's probably all this shit would probably never have happened. But unfortunately, here we are. So,
Yeah.
um,
One thing I want to address the chat about the popular vote. That's a horrible idea. I don't like the idea of our elections being decided by a handful of mega cities like LA,
Why do you think
New
they
York
want to import
City,
legals?
Detroit, Vegas. Like, no, it's a terrible idea. I approve the electoral college, and again, the popular vote meaningless. It's like, yeah, all of California voted for Hillary Clinton. That's a good chunk of the U.S. population right there, and that's ultimately what put her over the top. But she didn't want to campaign in the swing states because she didn't want to be booed. I don't like the idea of tyranny by the majority. I don't want to be beholden to these large cities. That's a horrible thing. And I even think the electoral college, there should be like some rendition of it, like on the state level. So it's like the counties are treated like little states. And like for example, I live in a very large county. Like, I don't believe my county should dictate public policy for the entire state. That's insane. LA County shouldn't dictate, public policy for the majority of the Southwest. Like, that's ludicrous to me.
Yeah, a big way to fix that? Repeal the 17th.
Well, whatever, man. Again, I mean, this is like why it's so important to talk about this kind of stuff. And I was hoping that Piscos would be, courageous enough to do so. But he, like Roto, like me and you, like, we're having a cordial conversation. We're respecting each other. We're not screaming at each other, calling each other names. Like, this is what I wanted with Piscos because of his background, allegedly.
yeah, he was trolling a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
But,
it didn't work, like he tried to rile me up or, get something out of me, but I don't think it worked. I mean, he was the one that, I guess in his mind got trolled. He was the one that got upset.
I think your guys' debate styles or conversational styles just weren't compatible. So I think that's really what it was.
Well, I mean, that's like
but
unfortunate too, because it's like, we don't have to like be at each other's throats. Like, we can just have a conversation. Like, we're just like hanging out, like eating food or like drinking coffee or a beer even. And like, he's just like incapable of doing that. Like, he was just not able to do it. And
that's also why
it's like unfortunate, again, like, you're a lawyer, like, this is your job. And, to debate essentially. I mean, that's like, that's what the courtroom is. What was that?
Shyster lawyer is.
I wouldn't know. I'm not gonna. I don't want to defame the guy. I'm just saying, like, if he's a lawyer, and this is his temperament, and this is his temperament, like, that's very telling. That's really unfortunate. I wouldn't want this person, representing me in even like a traffic case or something.
Yeah, jokes aside on that though, this is why I brought up the point where I think a lot of us on and Roto, I appreciate you jumping on and having a cordial conversation. I just jumped back in because obviously Gio was chatting at me in the chat here. So
that's fun. Yeah, Frog and Turge, I believe. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I think there was another guy that wanted to jump in, so maybe you can grab him. I think the groggy guy.
I mean, anybody can hop in and talk with me. Just no slurs, no calls for violence and stuff. Anyway, like I said, I'm open to talk with anybody. Just like be respectful. Like be chill. And obviously, some people fail that test. Like, again, like a couple weeks ago, like, I was debating a guy like on the merits of the moon landing and stuff, and we're supposed to have fun, and he was just like, again, doing the ruffle my hair dad thing and getting tripped up over really, really simple things. Like, I said outer space, right? Like, space is a hostile environment. Like, that's not a very complex statement. That's not something that should trip anybody up, but it tripped him up. And he's like an engineer. Like, what's going on with that? I said the moon is incredibly far away. I guess those terms are subjective, but like, people know what that means. But he didn't get it. And apparently, Pesos was just not able to hang. What's up, Mexican American? Thank you for joining.
Thanks, guys.
All right, buddy,
hey, man. Good talking to you.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh man, yeah. So there was like a bunch of stories and shit that I wanted to get into, but I guess I'll have to probably do it tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. This is why I wanted to make that point where we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different opinions on stuff, but the problem is at the uni party up at the top that's like screwing everyone else. Screwing all of us over and putting us at each other's throats. You know, that is probably the biggest thing I wanted to highlight, regardless of
Yeah.
these election cases and everything. I think from the last, even Piscos or whatever the heck his name is, like,
Yeah.
I mean, he at least said, he wants election integrity, but then he gaslit me when I brought up the Gateway Pundit article. It's like, dude, that is legit reporting. I could go down there myself and get those same records and publish it, and it'd be the same result as a member of the media here. But, it's one of those things where people have their blinders on, and I admittedly have my blinders on some topics. I will say that.
I don't know. I was
But
open minded the entire time.
I know, no, I know
None
I
of this
am.
is
No,
none of
I'm
this
not
is
saying you weren't.
none of this is difficult.
Yeah.
Like election integrity
No.
is like a really easy thing to do. For example,
Yeah.
some of the machines, you go and you vote on the machine, and you input, your votes. So there's data,
Mhm.
right? And then right next to it is an actual physical roll that documents what you did. So now there's
Yep.
2 copies of what transpired. Now you should be able to use that data, compare and contrast with the voter roll, and determine whether or not this is a legitimate vote, this is a legitimate ballot, this is a legitimate voter. And
Yeah.
when there's information that's missing, or where there's aspects of this process that is not transparent anymore,
Chain of
that's a
custody. Yeah.
problem. And like he was just like getting hung up on all this little stuff. And like I get like the whole like we have different styles of speaking. Well, no, not necessarily. This is how like adults fucking talk and resolve their issues. And he clearly can't do that at all.
Yeah, I mean, like Roto was saying, I guess he was kind of trolling you a bit. So, I mean, if he was coming at this,
No, he was
from bad
trying to
faith
troll
beginning-
because he like I said, like he fucking lost. When you start engaging
Yeah.
in ad hom attacks and you start visibly getting frustrated, like dude, like he was ruffling his hair violently. Like a cranky old man getting bitched at by his wife, like losing an argument to a woman. And like again, that just goes to show like a lot of these debate me bros just like can't handle it. By the way, Destiny did the exact same thing when he was debating Sean Fitzgerald, the actual Justice Warrior. Fucking Sean Fitzgerald completely fucking destroyed him and put him in his place. And I believe the debate topic was crime. I think it was at the Mines Festival, and Destiny did the exact same thing. Like all these dudes, they behave the exact same way. They believe the exact same shit. And he wants to say like he wants to expand voting. It's like why bother? Especially when there's no safeguards in place to prevent rigging, if you will.
Well, I
and
mean,
I've
that's
already
why
demonstrated like what contesting elections is not that out of the norm. I have a recent example here, and I used Obama as an example as well.
Yep.
Let me see. Is there a way to jump in the room? Oh yeah. I'll get you in. Hold up.
We also had a precinct model here in Arizona at one point in time.
Hop back in the room. Hop back in the room. I'll move you. I didn't see it, guys. I didn't have the Discord window up because I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't have a view of Discord.
So if they move back to a precinct model where there's more precincts and then
Hold on
they
one
do the
second. If
hand
you guys want to
count.
join the Discord channel, there's a link in the description. You should see a link in the description to the Discord channel. It should be valid.
So to finish what I was saying though is if they were to move back to the precinct model, so there'd be more precinct locations per your specific area, meaning you go to a designated polling site. They used to have this in Arizona until they changed it to the vote center model. And like I witnessed people jumping out of line. I witnessed people driving past, and I can just see them looking at the line, like they pull in the parking lot, like up too long of a line, and then they leave. Right. So to argue that voters weren't disenfranchised in 2020, they most certainly were.
No,
I
absolutely. I mean, there's videos of it, and like I said, if that transpired in Fulton County, like the FBI would be down there right now, arresting people, taking fucking names, and forcing the election department to extend voting hours. They would remedy that shit right away, so nobody's disenfranchised. But that courtesy
asked, I
cannot be
believe-
extended to people in Maricopa County. And so many of them, I messaged in the town square chat. Can you hop in Groggy Bottom? Is that you? Pirate Killer? Go ahead, join the friendly voice chat. I can't move you if you're not. Join the friendly voice chat, and then I'll move you.
So
Yeah,
I mean, there's just a
anxiously
lot
waiting.
of
Yeah, guys. I mean, you
There's
guys
a-
are more than welcome to challenge me or ask me whatever.
a lot of issues, and the issue like I said earlier, that everyone, like all these so-called journalists, those experts, they always just gaslight the election integrity crowd. And when you bring up
All right.
like, you know, some like basic stuff,
Yeah.
they get triggered.
Well, Gruggy Bottom, what's up, man?
Hey, yo, it's pretty late for me too, so I'm gonna try to keep it short to one question for you.
That's cool, bro.
So I was just listening to the conversation about, you know, we're getting caught up on definitional problems and all that crap.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, what is the difference between the insurrection as it was defined by the last gentleman who was speaking and by Pisco apparently, and what you would consider an insurrection?
Well, look, I mean, if President Trump directly instructed his audience or his fans to go into the Capitol and deliberately disrupt the certification, or in this case, it would be disrupting the inquiry as to the validity of the 2020 election, then I suppose that would constitute an insurrection, because he's preventing the transfer of power. Or let's just say there was no irregularities in the election and there was no problems with it. He just refused to concede, and he was going to use this sneaky maneuvering to remain in power, and he was going to use like Pisco stated, force. He's going to use his fans, and they're going to block doors. They're going to course the senators or whatever. Yeah, that'd probably fall in line with an insurrection, but.
So
There's just so many. Wait, Spencer. There's just so many unknown variables, like who exactly were the primary instigators, because it's not entirely clear. And the ones that have been, definitively identified, like Ray Epps, like why was this guy protected by the FBI? Why was he removed from the FBI's?
Well, I don't know anything. I'm not really talking about that specifically, and I'm not really talking about Trump specifically either in this case, because that would be the engagement of insurrection, not insurrection itself. So insurrection, from what I understand, maybe I'm wrong, but it's like a general cornucopia or collection of acts that are done by a group of individuals, right? So what I'm saying is, like, the folks who are the insurrection as a whole, not just Trump engaging in it, let's say, what is the difference between that and, I think you said specifically, and a legitimate insurrection?
Well, so let's look. I mean, I don't even think the lawyer Pisco was even citing 18 U.S. Code 2383, rebellion or insurrection, which whoever incites, sets on foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion, insurrection against the authority of the United States or laws thereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto, shall be fined under this title and in prison not more than 10 years or both, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. So as you notice, no one there was actually charged of insurrection. So if he used some like Merriam-Webster definition of insurrection as a gotcha, he's a bad lawyer, because he's not actually citing
Is
the law.
sedition mentioned in that citing as well?
Not on that particular line.
Because there are people charged with sedition, of course.
Who was charged with sedition? Do you remember?
Joe
Wasn't there like
Biggs?
I don't know all the names. I think there was like 11 people the last time that I looked at it, but I'm not sure of the names, to be honest.
Yeah, they were like Proud Boys or something. I don't really know. But
I remember that, where even though the Proud Boys leader wasn't there, they still charged him or tried to charge him with that stuff. Yeah,
man. I mean,
well, I mean, some people were charged, right? So I'm more so talking about, as I said, like I don't really. I'm not trying to go down rabbit holes of like this other person could have been charged or this other person, whatever. Like that to me is not super important. What I was just trying to get, and what I was confused about when I was listening is like, okay, well, we're going through this checklist of items that we're saying, okay, this is cool. Okay, if this happens, this happens, this happens. All right, yes, we're cool with that definition. But then the word legitimate insurrection comes up, and that's what threw me way off. I was like, okay, well, what's the difference? Like at that
under
point,
the
what's
law,
so it sounds like you're saying, from your perspective, if Trump would have been calling for violent acts directly, not indirectly or through like roundabout words, like using the fight like hell, yada yada yada. If he would have called for action directly, okay, we're going to call this whole thing insurrection, but subtract that out of the equation, and it's automatically not an insurrection.
If Trump had specifically said,
the intent.
Everyone go
Spencer,
here.
Spencer,
Oh, go ahead.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Like the intent matters. Like, why were people engaged in the hooliganism on January 6th? If we remove Trump from the equation, well, we need to ask ourselves, like, why did these people do what they did? who made them do that?
Right.
What
I agree.
prompted them to do that? And all that is incredibly relevant and important. And when there's, disputes as to like the motives of some of the people, and when some of them are allowed to be let go and others aren't, and when there's uneven application of the law, it suggests that, this may not be an insurrection. There may be something else going on. And I think
So
it's
I
worth
heard,
exploring.
So I heard one explanation of why the folks would be there, which would be to, of course, contest the results of the election based off of what folks have, and from my perspective, and it sounds like the perspective of the previous people that talked, under the guise, or I guess the rule of their leader saying certain things over the previous months, right? So that's one explanation that's been provided. What are some other reasons that folks could have been there, or why were they there in your view, or even just possibility wise?
Well, I mean,
You
that's
can answer.
an excellent question, but the problem is that
Like just one example, one example of a situation.
well,
Like what would you think?
The thing about the Capitol and the people that were there were a lot of people that were present at the Capitol while President Trump was speaking. So to suggest that they were under the spell of President Trump just doesn't really pass muster. And that's a tough hurdle to get over. And I asked Pisos, but he didn't really want to address it. He said he had an answer, but he never
What do you mean?
answered
What do you mean by that?
Can
Sorry.
I ask a question?
You're saying that, well, if I can go back to that first
Yeah, go ahead.
statement
Ask the
first,
question.
and then you can jump in. Sorry. So you said that people are there because he's speaking, but they can't be under the spell. Why are those two things?
Let me readdress that. Okay,
Confused.
so President Trump was speaking, and it was far away from the Capitol building. So when he was giving his speech about protesting peacefully, let your voice be heard, etc., the people that were already present at the Capitol could not have heard what he was saying. So for them to act out violently and then President Trump be blamed for it really doesn't make a lot of sense.
And Trump told people to go home too, but then he was
let him ask
deplatformed.
questions. Spencer, let him ask questions.
Sorry.
No, you're okay.
Sorry. I mean, I don't really, with the amount of technology that we have in our hands nowadays, like I'm not sure if that really holds water either, though. We can't say that those people aren't listening to the content that he's like. Obviously, it was super live streamed.
Yeah,
there was a ton of viewership on him at that time. I'm sure, and I'm sure you wouldn't deny that there was a ton of people who are even not in that specific area, although closer to the Capitol, could have been watching on their phones, listening to the radio broadcast, whatever they're listening to.
Yeah.
Ham radio. I don't give a shit. So a lot of people were listening to a lot of, or they were listening to that content at the time. Like I'd assume you'd agree with me there. That's totally possible, right?
It's possible. It's certainly possible. I'm just not really sure how likely that is. Like again,
why not?
Can I?
Well, because I'm not sure anybody has come forward and like, oh yeah, I was listening to Trump while I was standing outside the Capitol, and I just knew I needed to go in. Like I just don't.
But there are people saying that they went to the Capitol because Trump asked them to, though, right?
No, they went to go support their president, and then also peacefully announce their grievances to their politicians, which is completely legal under the First Amendment. I think everyone in this chat will agree that you have a legal right to peacefully protest, but once you start rioting, well, then that's not a peaceful protest anymore. And there were people in the crowd that did riot. And like I was explaining earlier, I've interviewed people that were there that day, and dude, it was a night and day difference from what you heard. A lot of the railings were already knocked down, so when people not knowing that, hey, the Capitol's closed off, it's just like they get charged with some bullshit charges.
I've seen a lot of the footage personally myself, and I mean, I'm sure I don't know if like the ordering of it being released or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much available to watch, and part of what I saw was, folks breaking into windows, and like you mentioned, like as soon as it turns riotous, you wouldn't approve of it, right? So there's folks breaking windows, there's folks, charging fences, there's folks pushing cops back,
and that was on the other lawn. I think there were two lawns, obviously.
I'm talking about when they're actually like going into the building, right? So if they're going into the building, we're not talking about the lawn anymore. Now we're talking about people actually breaking and entering into the Capitol building, right?
There were two sides where people were entering from, is what I wanted to make the point of. So there was a side where there was a lot of the cops, and there was the skirmishes that happened because the feds were basically launching tear gas grenades into the crowd and instigating the crowd when they're just standing out there peacefully.
Well, I don't agree with that.
But
like
and then there was also the
you have
other
to use
side
crowd
where
control
people.
measures in a riot situation, right?
And
Like,
I
you
understand, and I've
have to
filmed
do that,
riots
right?
before. I get it because we just recently had the riots for the kill your baby thing. Oh, what was it? Help me out here, guys. Roe v. Wade. Yeah, we just had those riots out here not too long ago. I filmed that, and like I filmed riots before. I get how it works, but
Okay.
the level. I can see where there were people in the crowd on January 6th that were rioting, and I agree that those people need to be charged for rioting. But was
Sure.
it an insurrection? That's where I disagree with Pisco
Well,
and other people that says no.
that was the core question. So we're like all circling right back to the core question, which was, okay, we have an idea of what insurrection is, but now we're talking about this extra step, this legitimate insurrection part. If the answer is as simple as we want Trump to say specifically go in and kill politicians or whatever, if that's your if that's your criteria to meet that, then you know what, you're an American. You can make up your own damn mind, and if that's what you think it should be the case for insurrection, that's the case. I just don't think that's written anywhere when we talk about
under
what
18 U.S. Code 2383. I mean, I would argue you have a very high threshold to reach reach
Oh yeah,
insurrection.
and that's why people aren't really charged with insurrection, right? It's a very difficult and kind of like difficult term to place somebody underneath. I don't think the act of insurrection, like the general act of insurrection, is difficult to define, which is why everybody's kind of came up with the same agreement on what it is. But I think it's very difficult to charge somebody with that. I totally agree with you there.
But isn't it?
I just
that
don't.
was
I
where
think we
that was
can,
where I
Spencer,
think.
why can't we slap the insurrection sticker on what we look at and see and saw the acts that people took, and whether or not everybody was doing it, or whether or not I don't think it should take the whole crowd doing it to make it an insurrection, and I don't think it should take like a specific statement from one person to then shift it into an insurrection. That to me seems like an invariably high standard. Like, what if Trump were like, how much can he say up until that point? Can he rile people up so much, but then just avoid using the specific words? I want you to go and fuck people up at the government.
So let me answer that.
Well, no, wait, hold on, Spencer. I actually do think that's fair, and again, like to what you said earlier, like a lot of these people weren't even charged or convicted of like insurrection. I don't think anybody was, as Spencer pointed out. I mean, now we're seeing, right here, like the Supreme Court just ruled it. I mean, this is just like this is today. Defendants arrested and charged after the January 6th Capitol riot saw glimmers of hope this week, thanks to a recent Supreme Court decision limiting the scope of an obstruction statute levied against hundreds of protesters from that day. And John Strand was one of these individuals, and he just writes on being released from prison after the motion for release was approved.
Yeah, I think that's. And hey, if stuff can be sorted out in court for particular individuals, I think that's great. I mean, the courts have to decide what the courts decide. I don't have a problem with that, and I think that people should only be charged up until including what they have committed, insofar as the penal code is concerned. Right?
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with that. That makes sense to me. I don't think anybody should be overcharged. I don't think anybody should be undercharged. And to be clear, when you guys talk about other riots that people commit, heinous acts or crimes or whatever, I think those people should also be persecuted, right?
Agreed.
Yeah,
I have no problem with that whatsoever. I think people who, I would go so far. I don't even like when, people go hard on folks who defend businesses in riot situations. Like, well, of course, people are going to protect their property and stuff like that, right? So I don't have a problem with any of that. I totally agree with you there.
And find out. I think that's what you're looking for there.
Yeah, I'm trying to put it in a nicer way. Yeah, so
you're good, man. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I don't have any problems with that. I think my main point of contention and something that I would hope that a lot of Americans, particularly at this moment, are thinking about is what is the differentiating factor between what the left-wing media or folks like me are talking about when it comes to what is insurrection as an act, not as a crime, but as an act.
Okay.
And did Trump engage in it? And two, are the folks who were led under his leadership to continue with that act, are they also engaging in insurrection? And I don't think, and I really would lean away from the idea that just because you haven't been charged with something doesn't make it right, wrong, or not insurrection, right? I don't think that makes any sense to me.
No, I mean,
let me ask you.
I mean, those are really like good questions to ask, and these are really good things to discuss. I mean, I like to keep things simple. You know, it's like, look, I look at the events that transpired, and you know, like you may see an insurrection, but I don't. You know, we look at the law, we look at the charges against hundreds of these people, and they're not charged with insurrection. So that runs contrary to the narrative that there was one. And and then of
Why is
course,
that? Why does that run contrary though? I don't.
well,
that part I
if there are,
understand.
if the media, let's say like the general media, the regime media is suggesting that an insurrection took place, but then you look at the individuals that were arrested and charged and convicted, and none of them were charged or convicted of insurrection. That's a problem. That runs contrary to the narrative, and it's important to just be mindful of that.
So let me ask the question then. So with all these people in the I'd say the Operation Mockingbird media, should those people be charged with attempted assassination of the former president and attempted and murder charges for the people
we're getting off into La La Land. Let's
No, I'm just asking. I'm just asking because that's like the same logic behind what you're saying there.
Well, can I take a different example? Maybe a simpler one. Okay. So, for example, we see instances in the media or instances in the news in general of where somebody may defame another person, right? Okay. So they lie about what they do. They lie about, maybe you accuse somebody of something heinous, right? Mm-hmm. But when you try to take that to court, and you try to sue somebody for defamation, it is one of the most difficult things to prove in court.
Especially if you're a public figure.
Of course, because not only you have to prove that, not only do you have to prove that they said the thing that was incorrect, but also you have to prove that they intentionally did that to defame you, which is incredibly difficult. You have to know their state of mind or mens rea or whatever. Like that, those court cases basically never proceed unless there is like some a black box conversation where somebody's recorded saying, "Yeah, I got that fucker," I totally lied about him on the news, right? Mm-hmm. But just because we can't prove something in court doesn't mean that we didn't witness what we witnessed. We witnessed that person defame somebody.
But you're
totally.
Yeah, presumably.
Well, I mean, I think we can
all. That's why they'll never be charged. I don't think those people will ever be charged for insurrection specifically. I think they can be charged with trespassing. I think they can be charged with damage of property. I think they can be charged with rioting. All these things. Those are easy to prove situations.
Correct.
But to prove insurrection is much more complicated. But I don't think you need to prove something in court for the general public to be able to have an understanding that an act happened.
No, in the court cases, did they admit?
That's fair too, but I mean, there's more than just like what we saw on TV or what we saw on social media. The law matters, and the rhetoric around that day matters. The people who got away with doing certain things, that matters. All of this is tied together, and it matters. And it just in my view, it just seems so resolution. It's just a really low resolution way of looking at this event and just being like, oh, well, it's an insurrection because people were screaming and shouting and kicking and doing all this stuff. But like, well, there's a lot more to it than that. And
I assume that you're minimizing it for like to be a joke, but that's not really what people are claiming, right?
I'm not minimizing anything. I don't like. If I had a magic wand, I would not want January 6th to happen.
Oh, of course.
And it couldn't have happened in the first place if
it was the kicking and screaming comment. So
let
I just wasn't sure if you're just joking around or not. But it wasn't just like the kicking and screaming, right? It was the organized event of a stopping or attempt to stop the peaceful transfer of power, right? That's what people are ticked off about. That's why people believe that this is an insurrection. It's not just because, people were shouting and putting on their like pink hats or whatever in a crowd. Like nobody's really ticked off about that. They're ticked off about what actually transpired. Now, if you want to say that the wider scope of this is A, people weren't charged, and B, Trump didn't specifically say, I want you to go in and fuck shit up at the Capitol, then that's, I just don't agree with that definition, in which case we'll never,
that's fair.
reach a
So
consensus, right?
Groggy, what do you think about Nancy Pelosi not allowing the DC Guard to come in and protect the Capitol? Same thing with the DC mayor. What do you think about that when Trump specifically wanted protection at the Capitol? What do you
Mhm.
think about that? Is it really an insurrection if Trump actually said that, hey, I want this extra security here. You guys are limited, you have like no security,
Mhm.
bring security to the Capitol, and then Pelosi and them refute it, and now you have the narrative that, oh, January 6th was an insurrection because they pushed through those little concert barriers that they had. It's like I was trying to make the comment earlier when they had the NATO summit last week. They had these giant, we're talking giant fences up. There was
Sure.
nothing like that up on January 6th. So it's to me a honeypot, like a Fed honeypot, what happened that day. And like I said, I've been covering a lot of this stuff out here in Arizona with the election integrity stuff. I know people that went. I've interviewed people, and it just, like I said, night and day difference between what you hear in the media and what you hear, firsthand accounts, right? And
Yeah.
one point
No,
I wanted to
I have
bring up too.
I have like
Sorry,
a good comparison to that. So when I was much younger, I got fired from my job for stealing it was a bottle of carpet cleaner because one of the assistant managers puked on my carpet at a house party. All right.
Yeah.
So
Cool story.
before
I like that.
yeah, thank you. I like to party, or did at a time. So before I took that, I actually spoke to the gentleman who ended up reporting me to loss and prevention. And I asked him, I was like, hey, man, listen, this party happened. Managers were there, yada, yada, yada. I don't have industrial grade carpet cleaner to clean up this puke. Can I take this? I'll bring it back. I'll probably use like a fifth of it or whatever. And he said, yeah, sure. Now, keep in mind, I was only like 17 at the time, or 18.
Okay.
I probably have to say 18. I was drinking, right? Yeah. So anyway, I brought it back as expected, so on and so forth. Now, I got fired. I got fired because I stole. Now, that's a fact. I did steal. That's truth, right? However, I can complain about the fact that I did feel a little honeypotted into it. I asked the specific question. I feel like I was entrapped. But that doesn't change the underlying fact that I did steal. And I feel like that's kind of a similar story to what you're trying to state here, which is, other folks allowed this insurrection to happen, right? They allowed it to happen by not taking preventative measures, by not acting prior to it occurring.
It was a psyop.
Yeah, sure. So let's say it is a psyop. Let's say the whole thing is a psyop. I don't agree with you, but let's say it is. Let's say it is.
Well, okay. Let me rephrase my comment. It was
Sure.
a psyop in the sense that they allowed it to happen. That maybe psyop's not the right word. False flag.
Sure.
The false
Yeah,
flag would probably be
that's true.
the better.
I'll
thing there.
totally concede that that's true. I don't, by the way, literally, I don't. But
Okay.
For the sake of conversation, I am. I'm conceding that. And okay, so the whole thing was a setup, but the folks still committed the act, didn't they?
There were people that were entrapped that went into the Capitol. Yes, you were right about that. And look, like I said, we're getting back to the original point. Unless they broke 18 U.S. Code 2383, and I wanted to get to the leader of the Proud Boys, they were trying to get them to turn on Trump and say, Trump ordered you to do this, right? And why do you think they charged him with so many like felonies and stuff? Because they couldn't get him on an insurrection. They punished him for that. So, it's the government working against the people very unethically there, where there is like, if it was a Blam Tifa riot, people would at most get like a slap on the wrist unless they actually killed someone. I mean, even then, good luck prosecuting them from what we've seen. But at the end of the day, it's a two-tiered justice system with who's in power right now and who has seated themselves in all these agencies. So that's where we get to like the uni party and the deep state comments, which a lot of people on the MAGA side are like, well, this is why we support X, Y, and Z candidate, because they're not a member of this. I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent
we're just
there,
talking about
but
we're talking about like what I'm specifically trying to talk about is the act of insurrection.
Yeah.
And what I was trying to elucidate from that story was essentially, even if there are all these other factors, whether it be like influence from the media or even influence from Trump to some extent, or influence from deep state actors, whatever, even if all of those things are happening, it's still there has to be some culpability or some, I guess, some taking of responsibility of the act itself.
And a lot of those
Right.
people did take responsibility. They took a plea deal. They did something. Or if you were a more prominent figure, you were, you were basically run through the coals, or whatever the saying is. So,
Right. So does that make it like? Doesn't that kind of like? We're talking about people taking plea deals to try to reduce their sentences, but also we're arguing the fact that they aren't charged with insurrection, right?
Because they
And
don't have
that's kind of,
or they don't
yeah.
have
I
the
mean, that
case
happens
for
in
insurrection.
court all the time. Is
Yeah.
you have a very high to meet standard. Legally, you have a very high to meet standard, even though definitionally they may fall into 98, 95% of whatever you're trying to categorize them in, right? We say, okay, well, we can't get them on that last 5%. So, or we don't have the video footage, or we don't have a direct quote from him. Like, we don't have a direct quote from that person saying, I want to carpet bomb the government or whatever it is, right? We don't have that direct quote from them. So we can't quite get them on that, even though we know they did 95% of this act.
You don't
We're going to
know they
plea
did if you
down
don't have that
to,
quote, though. That's where you have to prove that
I
in
don't think
court.
you need to hear the words to know intentionality, though. I don't think you need to hear that specifically. No, you can judge people based on their actions,
Okay.
to some extent. I don't think you can do that for everything. Like, I don't know, like, let's say you like there's no difference between somebody drowning a kid or dousing a fire, right? These are the two same things. Like, you could technically do that exact same action, which would be dunking the kid into water. One would be looked at very poorly and one would be looked at as you're a hero, right? So intentionality obviously matters in that case.
I'll concede that.
You can ask questions after the fact. You can, interrogate. You can bring them to court to find out more information, like, was the kid on fire in the first place? Things like that, to try to get to the intentionality of the action. I don't think you need to hear the person say the word. I mean, and we do this all the time. We have everybody prides themselves on having a bullshit detector. That's a big thing that people pride themselves on, right? You technically don't know what that person's thinking, but your bullshit detector's kind of going off, and you try to base off the fact of their acts, their previous behavior, their post behavior. I'm able to determine roughly what their intention is. And I think we do have previous actions that this crowd and their leader has made, and post actions that the leader and some of the folks have made afterwards, to try to build the narrative story of what these people were thinking at that particular moment in time, which was, we believe the election was stolen. Whether the validity of, and there might be validity to that, there might not be. I'm not really trying to get into that. I don't know all the court cases.
That bridge is already crossed.
Yeah. I honestly don't know enough about it to tell you. So, so I'll stay out of that. But we believe the election was stolen. And thus, we are going to do whatever action we can take, what we see as fit, and what we've been told is a fit action, to try to stop the peaceful transfer of power in order to essentially, like, shore up that grievance that you're talking about, right?
So what
to
was
shore up that problem.
What was the quote, not to deviate, or I mean, it's related. What was the quote that a lot of the people have been using on the far left, where it's like, we can't let Trump
How's it going, everyone?
He's a threat to democracy. There's some specific phrase that they use, and I'm blanking on it right now because it's like 12 o'clock at night while we're talking. But it was something to the fact that, existential threat or something like that.
Existential threat.
Yep.
So it's
I've
like,
heard that quote. Yep.
So it's like, it's kind of, if you're arguing that, that's why I brought up earlier, shouldn't MSNBC, shouldn't anyone that's been saying that be also investigated and charged because of the guy that just tried to assassinate Trump? and ended up killing one person and injuring
I
others.
think you could definitely, yeah, I think you could definitely investigate the fella who took the shot and say, you know, look at the type of media that they've consumed, look at the type of posts that they've made, you know, try to catch up on whatever their history was to see if somebody incited that behavior, right? A call to action would be something that I would look pretty negatively upon. So if they had a video of some like crazy left-wing person saying somebody ought to shoot this guy, and then he went and shot the guy, then I'd be like, yeah, fuck that.
Yeah.
They should be held at least partially responsible for that action, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. I'd have no problem with that.
And the shooter was allegedly wearing a Demolition Ranch T-shirt. So should Matt Carricker be investigated for this as well, just because the guy was wearing a shirt?
I think the difference would be, I think the specificity has to be, is that particular media source or person trying to incite that behavior?
Or was the guy
would
just
be
wearing
where I
urban
draw the line.
camouflage? You know, like if
But
I go
he could
to
be.
go
Yeah,
to film
I
a
think you would
riot, I'm
need
gonna
to
wear all black. You know.
Yeah, I think you need to, you know, take a look. I said it's easy to take a look at what the person's consumed. A lot of these people who go off the deep end up being very public about what their views are. So you end up finding a lot of their shit on social media. You end up finding, you know, you can pretty easily tie back. You know, you'll read about a crazy guy and it's like, oh, he's been reading the Communist Manifesto for the last 30 years. Okay, cool. Like we understand why he did that. Or he's read the Unabomber papers. Okay, cool. You know, you can get a general gist of why these folks are taking these actions. Just like I think you can look into the actions that people took on January 6th and what type of media they were consuming beforehand, or what they're saying after the fact. Why did you do this thing? Oh, I did this because of X reason or Y reason or whatever. I think that's all important and should make the person who incited that type of behavior at least partially culpable for the actions that were taken.
Okay, but we do agree that they had a legal right to protest that day.
Yes, legal right to protest. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Legal right to protest. Yeah, no problem.
On a lighter note, I got my Discord to fucking work finally. You guys were talking.
Nice.
I had to run this command prompt, and I had to delete this folder, and now it works again. I have never seen this problem turn up, and it interrupted the show, and it interrupted the recording, so now I'm going to have to split this up into 2 parts, and it's really annoying. But yeah, man,
You're getting too spicy.
it is, yeah, I know, the Mark Zuckerberg took me out. He took out the stream.
Sorry to hear that.
Ruined my mojo. But yeah, no, I don't mind you guys coming in here and, you know, challenging me and asking these questions and, you know, having these cordial disagreements. I mean, I wish Piso's fans, I should have talked with them before him, because he was just completely unreasonable. Like, you guys have been like really kind and like gentle and friendly. And again, I the way that I'm talking with, the way that I talk to Pisos, I'm talking to you guys as well, the exact same way. And like, I've had a literal member of Antifa, someone who's like been arrested and stuff, like on this show multiple times. And, you know, we're hanging out talking like we're sitting at a bar drinking a beer. I don't know why Pisos is, you know, or Pisos can.
I think it's honestly like it's a game of. It's the problem is that I don't talk to a lot of folks on Twitch, YouTube, whatever. I don't. This is one of the fewer times that I have reached out. I think I talked to a guy named Flamenco once or whatever. So it's very, very limited. Oh yeah. We had a huge argument about the Mueller papers years and years ago. Anyway, so
nice.
With him, he has talked to so many folks, particularly on the right, and there is a I think he agrees with me, and probably partially why he had the problem having the conversation today, that there seems to be somewhat of a disagreement of facts, and that is very unique to politics exclusively, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're in court, you can't dispute the facts. They're documented. There's video recordings. You can't present anything that isn't on a facts basis unless you're getting an opinion from somebody, which has to be professional or whatever. But anyway, point being, if you're presenting something in court, you present facts. And now in politics, it seems to be worse than ever. There is a disagreement on what the facts were on the ground.
Yeah.
And I think it's difficult for anybody who's in like the legal scheme of things to talk to folks where he believes, and I agree with him, just to be clear, that there are specific facts that highlight this as an insurrection. And if you're going to disagree with the particular facts, to a person who just follows facts, you're going to look like an idiot, right? Like that. So he might dismiss you in that case.
Yeah, no,
but
that's
I don't
perfectly
really give a shit about
fine.
the legal system. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, like the problem with that is like I wasn't saying anything that was untrue. I didn't engage in any weird, wacky conspiracy theory. Like when we're talking about him saying like he believes an insurrection occurred, and I'm just like, okay, well, you have the activity of these two groups at different dates, but you have completely different outcomes, and you have a completely different application of the law for both groups. Like that runs contrary to the claim that there was an insurrection. Like that's not like a conspiracy theory, and that is 100% factual. Like these two groups of people were treated completely differently.
That's actually looking past the facts, though, right? Because you're saying you're basing it off the results, not the underlying facts. You're saying the law treated. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, to supplement that, the Supreme Court literally agrees with me in the way that a lot of these cases played out in court. The way that these cases played out in court was not kosher. And, you're getting, like John Strand is going free. There's a handful of people that are going free. And, convictions are being overturned, et cetera, et cetera. So
right. You're still talking. Sorry. If I can just spit in one word. You're still talking about the results, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying, you guys had a disagreement with, and why you weren't able to talk past that particular point is, he's talking about the actions that were taken on that day. So the facts on the ground, as they were recorded. I mean, there's so much footage. You can't deny the things that happened, right?
No, I'm
not. Exactly. So, but when you're building up to the definition of an insurrection, you don't actually have to look at what people were charged with. You don't actually have to look at what the Supreme Court thinks, 30 days later.
Well, we can, because it's been 3.5, 4 years already since, the event took place. And now we have a more full picture. And so like there's no excuse not to really engage
and the January
6th.
I'm going to interject and say the January 6th committee purposely withheld information, video, all that kind of stuff that would have helped the defense in a lot of these cases. So it was rigged against the defendants in these cases because of the government narrative that they wanted to pursue. And it's very sad. I mean, I'm going to say this again. I'm going to repeat my comment about the U.S. Code. Unless it actually meets the definition of insurrection, where they are actually trying to overthrow the United States government, it's not an insurrection. It is a riot. I mean, they could try tossing the whole, delayed administrative procedures thing. Well, that just got tossed. So what the feds are probably going to do with the remainder of these cases now is just try to stack misdemeanors to try and give the same level of sentence.
We're still talking about the results afterwards.
I'm trying
to say, like, my example would be, let's say there were 5 toothpicks dropped on the ground on January 6th, and then the Supreme Court says 6 months later that there was actually 10. We would still know, if there was video footage, that there was 5, or what did I say, 6 toothpicks dropped on the ground. It doesn't matter if they say there was 10 later. It doesn't matter what they try to prove later, because we know what happened.
Yeah,
that's your perception of
it.
And I mean, you mentioned. I'm sorry, I don't know the second gentleman's name.
Spencer.
You mentioned that you film riots, right? You film
when it was a little spicy out here during the Blam Tifa riots. I did some filming of that. I also filmed the Roe v. Wade stuff that happened. I actually had some great conversations before
I'm sure
it turned spicy.
You'd be super ticked off if you had video footage of something, or you personally witnessed something, and then in some court system at some point in time, they dispute what you saw, or they dispute your footage, and that would be very frustrating for you. And that's what I feel like. That's what I feel like watching this go through, because I feel like what I've seen through all the footage that I consumed obsessively for some odd reason, all this footage that I consumed, and I see that, I see people breaking in. I see the speech that they're listening to beforehand. I see the actions that they took at that time, and I'm like, you know what? This doesn't feel right to me. This feels like people are ticked off that they didn't get what they wanted, which at the end of the day was either, in their view, a proper election, or just to get Donald Trump in. I'm sure there's a mixture of those two folks in general.
But you don't know. You don't know
I
their
don't
state
know.
of
You're
mind.
right. It could be 50-50. It could be 60-40. I have no
It could be
idea.
even less than that. It could be 1%.
I
You
don't
don't know
I
these
don't think
people's
so.
state of mind, and that's what the state has
That's
to prove. That's
And
what we're
not only
missing in
that,
this conversation.
not only that, like we
but
can all
you
agree.
can't honestly think that, right? Like, you can't honestly think it's closer. What would you put it closer to? 50% or
innocent until
1%?
proven guilty.
That
Innocent
is
until
such an
proven guilty.
absolutist view on things that you can't tell intentionality whatsoever based off a person's actions
I mean,
before and
I can
after.
have an opinion on stuff, but it doesn't mean
Yeah, that's
it's
what I'm
the
asking. We're having
outcome.
a conversation about
Well,
I'm
I
not
don't think it
a
was an
Supreme Court
insurrection.
judge.
wait,
I know.
hold
I
on.
don't think it was.
Can it
I'm
also
saying
be
what's
fair?
the percentage?
Can it also be fair? Like, okay, so I'm just gonna assume everybody in this call, we were not there in Washington D.C. We all watched this on our phones. We watched this on our PC, correct? So, like, what we see on the phone, what we see on social media, like that might not be the entire truth. That's not the whole story. Like the courts have to get involved. Certain authorities have to get involved and ascertain what truly transpired. So you can have the worldview that like it was an insurrection because you saw the violence and all the destruction. And while I saw the exact same thing, I'm just like, well, this looks just more like, hooliganism. This looks more like rioting, the kind that we saw at Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation. So I'm kind of tripping out as to why these two groups are being treated differently. And then, of course, now in this moment in time, when we're seeing these cases fall apart, when we're getting more information about it, it becomes more clear that it wasn't necessarily an insurrection. Like our eyes play tricks on us. The videos don't always tell the full story, even though like I know like a picture says 1,000 words. Like when you're not there and like content is selectively edited, or you have a pundit from CNN opining, including words that are, very charged. And that gives people the impression that something really terrible happened when it really wasn't what they say it was. And we're at a point now where it's like, well, people are being let go. Charges are being dropped. The courts are, saying, hey, these people weren't treated fairly. They're being overcharged, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's also something that a lot of people, need to have the political courage to say, I saw one thing and I strongly believe this one thing, but all the evidence coming forward are suggesting otherwise.
Can we really call it hooliganism when somebody got shot?
Well, okay,
that was
you're talking about
the
Ashley,
state. That
Ashley
was
Babbitt?
the
Yeah,
DC
yeah, of
police
course.
that were shooting and killing people, or one person.
Yeah, no, but that's in response to something, right? They're not just going to shoot
woman
at
was
a.
unarmed.
If you want to say that the DC police just shot at a person who was peacefully
Rules
protesting,
of engagement.
Well, I'm not saying
Rules
that
of
she was
engagement.
peacefully protesting, but she was an unarmed individual who didn't pose a threat to anybody. And I'm led to
I believe the senators were right on the other side of. They were in a room that was right behind that particular door, right?
Allegedly,
or down the hallway from that.
And Groggy, I think we can all agree that people that were actually being violent on there, they should be charged with whatever applicable crime.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm more worried about the people that were there peacefully protesting that got charged.
I'm not
sorry, I
saying
didn't
that.
cut you off.
Sorry. I was just saying that I was just commenting on the hooliganism comment. I can't in good conscience call something hooliganism when we have somebody who was shot. We've had people breaking and entering. We had people who attacked police officers. That to me is past the level of hooliganism. Just like I would say, if anybody got violent at any other particular protest, that would be past hooliganism as well. So I just wanted to push back a little bit on that.
Fair enough. I can see that point of view.
At the footage. I don't think you could look at the footage and say, these guys were just having a hoot, right? I don't think so.
You're probably some people were. Some people were.
And I will say this:
some folks are just fucking tailgating for sure. Yeah, for their work. Yeah.
Chaos, enjoying the chaos. Yeah.
Exactly.
No. But I will say this: why was it when Trump was in office, right? And you had all those Blam Tifa rioters that burned down the church right outside the White House or lit it on fire. And and then actually stormed the White House grounds, right? Why, and injured a bunch of Secret Service, right? Why is that not an insurrection, but this is?
So to me, the difference is.
But they were trying to overthrow the government. I'm going to preface that. They were trying to overthrow the Trump administration that they thought was illegitimate.
What was the plot? What was the plot, though? Like, what
You
was the
had
plot
an
to overthrow the
organized
government?
you had an organized group that was rioting and burning down buildings, and they have actively said that they want to get rid of Trump.
They had to secure the president in a bunker during that event.
No. What I'm saying is, like, what was the plot? Like, were they going to kill him?
I have no idea, but they felt the need to send President Trump into a bunker for his own security.
Right, but there would have to be a plot for it to be insurrection. It couldn't just be like some guys got mad and got violent, thus insurrection. To me, there has to be this is what's partially separating it from just being a riot, right? Was there a plot or a plan to overthrow the government in some way, and how would that be executed? How would they execute that plan?
Is it organized crime if you have a bunch of people dressed up in the same black outfit?
Maybe. I don't know. We're talking about insurrection.
Yeah, I mean, I'm relating it to that. So, you mean, why do you think all these people hide their faces and stuff? Because you just had a bunch of charges recently dropped by, I think it was a Soros appointed, and I say Soros appointed, I mean back the campaign judge, because these people, you couldn't see their faces. We can't prove it's this person. So case dismissed. You know what I mean? So why do you think these people, when they go out and riot, and why do you think they cover their face? Why do you think they wear all black?
Well, I'm assuming so they don't get in trouble. That makes total sense to me. But
that would be more. But why are they doing that? What is the point of them doing that? Are they just going there and say, yeah, this is we're all goth kids, guys. We're all gonna just dress up in black. No, we're gonna they're out there clearly for nefarious purposes. Now, whether you get them on just rioting charges or to the level of, hey, they were trying to break into this building and burn it, and it's a government building. Does that get up to rebellion or insurrection under the U.S. code or whatever state law is applicable? That is the question. That's what has to be proven in court. The thing that I want to say is, with all this stuff, it has to be proven, and if the government doesn't have a good case on either grounds for insurrection, they're probably not going to charge them with it. And if they do, it's just to get them to have a plea deal later on.
But we can look at, like, when we were talking earlier about what makes this an insurrection, and you mentioned it yourself. Yep. We're talking about specifically, like, there has to be the purpose of delaying would be the word that I use. No, but you can say let's go so far. Let's go so far as to say overthrow.
That's a different statute.
So let's say overthrow. Okay. So let's say overthrow. If that was the case, right? What was Antifa's plan to overthrow the government?
They wanted to get rid of Trump.
But that, where there must be some sort of, do we have any evidence that they were trying to kill him? Or,
I mean, I'd have to look at the old court cases, but I believe in certain cases. I mean, these guys are all in their little chats and whatnot. They're not that sly. I remember the Steven Crowder video with Not Gay Jared when they infiltrated one of those little Antifa cells at one of the college campuses, where I think it was Shapiro that was speaking. Funny video, but pretty eye-opening on kind of what these groups' dynamics are. And there's been a lot of stuff exposed of the year and how these group operates. They're not there just to peacefully protest, rah rah, we're Marxists, yada yada yada. No, I mean, we've seen the Summer of Love, right? We've all witnessed that. And if you are telling me that these people did not have ill will, or some of these people in the group would want to overthrow the Trump regime, which they thought was illegitimate, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm not even saying I wouldn't even. I'm sure if you were to ask them and they, let's say they had absolute proof that you weren't going to rat them out, I'm sure a lot of them would say, "I wish I could put a bullet in the guy's brain." I'm sure a lot of them would say that.
Oh no, look at all the actors that have said it. Kathy Griffith with the Trump head. Freaking just recently, Tenacious D, Jack Black's dude, the guy, was it
Kyle
Cass?
Gass.
Yeah, Kyle Gass. Yeah,
Yeah.
he just
One
got
of the best guitar
freaking
players ever.
yeah. You can't kill the metal. The
Yeah.
metal will live on. But yeah, dude, like they say, like all these people say this type of stuff, right? And granted, it's protected free speech up to an extent, right? But
yeah, and that's where I'm kind of having the hard time breaching the gap here, because when I look at the Antifa stuff, let's take them for example, burning down a church, whatever the case may be. That type of destruction of property is illegal and should be treated as such. But I don't see where the end point, because it's not like they're going to burn down a church and then Trump's going to be like, all right, I give up. I don't want to be president anymore.
I was
That's not
using
gonna
the church example from the time they tried to raid the White House. But like I'll use a local example from out here in Arizona when the groups rioting were trying to storm the Capitol, our state capital down here, and then the National Guard had to get deployed, and they put up a bunch of barriers around the state capitol. That was some pretty spicy times, man. And inhale,
I would
even though I
think
was
that
filming, I
it was,
inhaled way too much film, and was away from the nonsense. A lot of tear gas in the air, not fun. But
I would say if there was, like, let's say the opposition party, the party that I'm not sure whose side it was on between the two of them. I'm not too familiar with what you're talking about. Let's say there was Democrats that were going up on stage being like, we believe this election is going to be fraudulent. We
that's
believe.
the right to say.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. They can say that. I wish they would say it with more evidence prior to that happening, but let's say they just say it. So we believe this election is going to be stolen. We believe that the other side is no good, X, Y, Z reason, whatever, and we're going to go to the Capitol together to protest this.
Yep.
And we're going to, and
Completely
let's just say he says the same words as Trump, the fight like hell, whatever. And I don't even think Trump shouldn't be allowed to use those words. I think in the political landscape, I think you have to kind of take things contextually. I think it's different if somebody just goes on MSNBC and says, we need to fight for our democracy, versus somebody like being in front of a huge crowd that is a walkable distance away from a building that they are planning to protest to. I do think there is a reasonable difference there. But on the underlying part of this and the worst part, and I think what Pisco is trying to get to in the conversation as well, even though he was a little tilted.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't hold it against him. I mean, I'll be willing to talk to him again about, a number of other things if he wants. I mean, like, I'm not mad at him at all.
I'm not sure. Good luck. But
won't
the
ask,
underlying
but
part of it, what I think doesn't help the Trump case is that there are other steps, let's call those extrajudicial steps that he's taking to try to push forward this plot. And I'm not using plot in a diminutive way. What I'm saying is that there is like steps in the plan that are being taken to meet some end goal. The end goal being contesting or delaying the election results from being fun.
He didn't send people over to delay the election results. So that's the thing. That's the disconnect there. I think he's,
We need to help Mike Pence make the right decision. Is that what does that mean?
If you have a bunch of people outside peacefully protesting, no, that's not in violation of the law. No.
No. I'm not saying. Well, I'm saying what did he mean? You said first that Trump wasn't asking anybody to delay anything, right?
No.
So I'm answering that part specifically. So I'm saying, what did he mean by we need to go make sure that Mike Pence makes the right decision?
Yeah, it means he's got to reject the certification of the election and let the states decide. It's very simple.
But does that mean insurrection?
The end goal would be delay. No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's one part of the puzzle that we're trying to piece together, right?
So if there was adequate security outside of the Capitol building, which Trump had requested, would that have been an issue? Where you had National Guard and Capitol Police there with
I don't know. I don't know if they would overrun that as well. I'm not sure. I don't think I can tell you.
So it wouldn't
well,
have been a Fed honeypot then, if Trump had gotten the resources that he wanted, but then was refuted by Nancy Pelosi, who's the Speaker of the House.
I don't think that's exactly how that went down.
That is what happened, and you have her daughter actually admitting it on film somewhere, and that came out pretty.
That is unfortunately true. It's really bad, but
isn't there folks really like from within? Yeah, sure.
Greg, let me just ask you this, because I mean, I want to kind of bring this back to the initial tweet of Willie Mack and Destiny's inflammatory comments. I mean, like right now, the main theme, the main topic of discussion in public discourse, especially by the mainstream media, is unity. So given everything that we've talked about tonight, I mean, I'm really glad that I've been able to like get along with you guys for the most part, and chat for the most part was orderly, but like there's obviously massive disagreements. I mean, we're all saying the same thing, but we're all disagreeing on, like really crucial stuff. Do you see unity as a possibility for the country, or what's your opinion about that?
I don't think right now. No, I don't. Unfortunately, I wish I could say I want to be positive about these things, and I really try to think positively about them. And obviously, like, we're all in our own bubbles. We surround ourselves with people with similar opinions. The only thing that kind of takes us out of that comfort zone sometimes is the internet, and sometimes that can make it worse, where we end up getting, funneled into whatever particular group that we're listening to or source that we're listening to, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
But I think right now, the issue is the temperature has been turned up so high that it reaches, like, I'll tell you from a Democrat perspective. From my perspective, I feel like, the meme with Lisa and Bart fighting, where Bart starts swinging his fists at her but not quite touching her.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And he says, "I'm not hitting you. I'm not hitting you." That's what I feel like as a Democrat, that I've been treated by the Republican Party for the last 10 years of my life, where they've said inflammatory thing after inflammatory thing, or they called me a cuck, they've called me a libtard, they've called me all these things because of the opinions that I've held for years and years and years. And now when we punch back once, it feels like I'm talking about from my perspective, right?
Yeah,
when we
punch back, you're not talking about the assassination there. I just want to clarify.
Spencer, let him speak. Let him speak.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. So that one lone gunman does not make a whole movement. Okay, so let's put that guy aside. When we try to punch back rhetorically, is what I mean. Then I feel like we are being told, you don't want unity. You don't want this country to come together. You're really just as bad as the worst ones, right? And that hurts my feelings, because I feel like I've held back. I feel like my side has relatively, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's some loons, but we've been relatively cordial. Insofar as the public space of how we talk to people and how we debate our ideas. And then you got, Marjorie Taylor Greene sharing the president's son's dick in front of Congress,
Yeah, I don't know.
And it's just that's the way we're getting punched on one side. And we're like, you know what? Donald Trump really did lose his wife seemingly right before this election. And everybody's like, oh my God, I can't believe you would bring that up. That's crazy. Come on, dude. I don't know. I just don't think it's fair.
Well, I mean, to kind of add to that, really quick, let me just address this chat. Destiny got banned on Kick. Yeah, I kind of, I mentioned earlier, I completely disavow the things that he's been saying about that firefighter who lost his life protecting his family, trying to protect other people. Sure. And, but again, if you're going to be a free speech absolutist, you have to defend unpopular speech. There's people saying a lot of really ugly stuff on social media, and I completely disagree with it, but I'm not really about banning people or kicking them off platforms or muting them or whatever the case may be. And it's really unfortunate. I mean, he was just on Piers Morgan. I didn't listen to the clip yet, but he was freaking out. He was just, Piers Morgan was dadding up on him. And, kind of to what you were saying about your feelings being hurt. I'm not above saying that my feelings were hurt too. I was a Bernie bro. I'm still a registered Democrat. And what I've seen since 2015 repeatedly was almost exclusively Trump supporters getting beat up, getting harassed in public, getting their hats stolen, getting spit on, getting carjacked. And this is what I mentioned to Pesos earlier, but he just didn't really want to engage with this for whatever reason. And I'm just like, we talk about the inflammatory language being used in public discourse, but like, I don't see Trump supporters getting beat up. Biden supporters or Hillary supporters getting beat up, getting kicked out of restaurants for wearing the hat or whatever the case may be. Like, we're on the receiving end of political violence, and it really isn't the other way around. And I'm just like, again, like, where are the examples of, the Democrats being as poorly treated as us? Like, I've never engaged in, like blatant hostility towards someone because of their race. But people like myself have been accused of like the most horrific racism imaginable, like all the horrific racism against Asian Americans. Like that Stop the Asian Hate campaign was not meant to stop Asian hate. It was meant to demonize people like myself. And then, of course, there's all these videos of these violent attacks, and none of those people look like me. None of those people are Trump supporters. None of these people are wearing the MAGA hats. Like, none of these people seem to be political. There's just this crazy violence ensuing, but we're the ones blamed for it. Like, Democrats aren't being blamed for these types of things, and they're completely off the hook. There's all these fake hate crimes, which is what I like to cover on this platform. And the fake hate crimes are designed to demonize people like myself. Like, let me see if I have it pulled up, because there were it was a scholarly article about like the I gotta delete this, like the signs of genocide, and like these are the predictors or the markers of an incoming genocide, and like the Trump supporters fit the bill. Because people like myself don't really have political power. We're not necessarily represented.
Try to think. So I would try to frame it in a slightly different way. So I think one of the big problems with this assumption is that when we say that Trump supporters are getting assaulted, right? Mm-hmm. We say automatically that is by a Democrat, right? And Democrats are half the country. So chances are, if a Trump supporter is going to get beat up by anybody, if they're a very forward-facing Trump supporter, so somebody who's wearing the hat, somebody who's going to the rallies and screaming about their side, and the typical one we see on, like, let's say the Newsmax or whatever, right? Like, yeah, people who are like full-blown I am Team Trump, right? The likelihood of them getting hit by a Trump supporter is next to none, right? They are, of course, going to get hit by somebody who is Democrat or who is not voting at all. Yeah. I think that saying that it's easy to spot out situations in the media or through news reports or whatever where a Democrat is assaulting a Trump supporter. And I think that that's wrong. They shouldn't be able to do that. And they should obviously be charged for that, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that a lot of the heat, like I guess the tension between Republicans and Democrats has been because of the media on both sides of the aisle?
Yes, partially, for sure. Yep.
Okay.
100%.
Are you aware
of where I disagree with is who is doing the most ratcheting. That's where I kind of, at least from what I've seen, I feel like there's been, let's say like 90-10 of one side saying, these snowflakes don't know what they're talking about. They are unpatriotic, yada yada yada, with no reasoning, right? Like, if somebody says somebody is unpatriotic because they don't believe in the peaceful transfer of power, I don't have a problem with that. That's a reasonable thing to say to somebody who believes that. But to just say somebody is unpatriotic because of, I don't know, they don't want a particular Republican in power or something like that. Right. Like, that's unreasonable. That's what patriotism is about, voting and putting your beliefs on.
I hate the two-party system, by the way. I think the whole uni-party thing that we got going on right now is trash, and I think we need to get rid of it. I mean, how many billions of dollars have we sent to Ukraine, where we have, I go to downtown Phoenix right now, they have the zone. It's like LA's Skid Row. not as bad, but still pretty bad. And I mean, it's just a mess. So you're telling me we're sending all these taxpayer dollars overseas when we can't even clean up our own house? You know, that, I mean, I think that's where a lot of the areas where Republicans and Democrats can kind of unify, where, hey, what the hell is the Uni Party spending all of our taxpayer money on? Let's focus on that problem versus, you know, I mean, granted, we're all going to have differences of opinions on different topics, but
Yeah.
I think that's
I'm not
where we
sure
can
if that gets
unify,
us
you know?
closer to unification, because being like essentially what you're talking about is like a at least isolationist light, you know?
To an
And
extent.
I think to have, when you have an open mind of potentially sending dollars to other countries that support you in some particular way, whether they're an alliance member, whether they're in NATO, or whatever the case may be, or you just don't like seeing starving people or whatever, and you know there's 90% of their people are starving versus, you know, 2% of our people starving, right? Let's say it's any one of those reasons. I think when you start taking an isolationist point of view, it actually makes it more difficult to find commonality and common ground between people. Because I think there's just as much of a difference between somebody who lives in, you know, two different parts of the UK and somebody who lives in, or somebody who lives in a part of the UK and, let's say, California, and somebody who lives in Florida in California. There's a lot of differences between those individuals. And I just don't think an isolationist point of view or trying to close up what we're looking at is really a unifying idea. And as a Democrat, I don't believe in isolationism. I don't think it's a good thing. I think that you have to have an open mind to what important expenses there may be that come with being a world superpower. And the United States, I mean, greatest country in the world, whether or not we're
Yep.
fighting. So, you know, like we have a responsibility, you know, Spider-Man, right? Great power, great responsibility. We have a responsibility to look after who we can support across the world and to keep people in check when we need to.
So you would agree then that those countries that we are helping, we would get some benefit from, you know, they're paying their fair share to us in terms of, you know, hey, if we're gonna, you know, we're giving X amount to NATO, then, you know, this is what we need back. Oh, you know, it's, would you
Let's
say
say you
that
and
is
your little
fair?
brother, let's say you and your little brother are going to buy a PS5. Okay. Your brother's been, you know, collecting his allowance over the last little while, and he's happened to muster up, you know, $100. You have had a job, and you got to pony up 500. So you're both paying the 550, right? Are you expecting to get paid back by your little brother later on, or are you just going to enjoy the PS5 together?
Well, I'll use another. I guess not an. I'll just go with the historical argument. I mean, we've been in Europe since World War II. Why is it that these countries haven't been able to pay their fair share, and why has the U.S. had to foot the bill on a lot of stuff all this whole time? Now, I get the rebuilding thing. If you want, I mean, I don't want to go down too far that rabbit hole where, you know, obviously the U.S. helped rebuild Europe, but then as an we got a bunch of you know, military bases and stuff that we have overseas and other stuff going on there, but
right.
why
I think this all
shouldn't
works
these
on a
countries
scale,
pay
though,
their
right?
fair
Because
share
like
to us for protection?
I don't think it's fair that if I speed, I have to pay a $125 fine, and a billionaire has to pay a $125 fine. I think that's bullshit. I think there should be a sliding scale on what you should pay if you have that infraction. So I don't think that's ever going to change, but it's just something that pisses me off, right?
Okay.
And I think I apply that to this situation the same, where I say, okay, well, we are the largest economy in the world. There's no doubt about that. Thus, we have to pay a larger amount into whatever it is we're investing, whether that be national security, whether that mean alliance building, whether that be trade amongst, countries that are trying to, be on the up and up, and that we can later, trade with in a more robust way. We have to shell out dollars to make those things happen. These are all cost benefit analyses. Now, you might disagree on what is more important in the short term. That's totally possible, but America doesn't think on the short term. America thinks on the 100-year, 200-year, 300-year, and that sucks. In the time that you're living, it kind of sucks because it's like, well, fuck, am I even going to see my dollars back? And maybe you won't.
I mean,
Maybe
I'm
you
not going to
only
have Social Security.
Well, then
at
that
the
would
rate they're
suggest that
going
we're
through.
not being represented, man. I mean, if we don't want that, but the government suggests otherwise, contrary to what the people vote for. I mean, this is largely, the thing with Trump. It's Trump wants to scale back the wars, the conflicts, and wants peace. And the current regime does not, which is why we're seeing all these violent conflicts in Eastern Europe and in the Middle East, etc. And I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. And I'm not willing to fight for it.
The representation comment, I mean, like, we vote, right? That's how we get our representation, and we hope that our representatives, will listen to the words that we say and then behave accordingly, right?
So do you think it's... oh, sorry, go ahead, finish that.
All I was going to say is, like, I don't think that, but I don't think it would be responsible for us to think, and again, I'm not trying to be diminutive here, but to think greedily and short-termed with how we build budgets. And it's very risky to start saying we need to bring everything in home and then just let the rest of the world sort it out.
So
I don't think that's a good idea.
So using that analogy, you use the analogy of like the speeding ticket, you want the rich to pay more.
Totally.
So isn't that like a separate but equal thing?
What do you mean?
Like, in the term that you're treating two different classes differently? Like, why is it not the same for everyone? Why do you feel that way?
Yeah, sure. So I think it comes down to an ethical standpoint, where I feel like there is almost like a duty. I get like a Kantian duty to try to help more when you have more. And I hope that ideology kind of is reflected in the politics that I support. I hope that, if I make more, I try to think about, like, what would I do in that type of situation? And I'm not trying to jazz myself up by any means.
Yeah.
I like having money just as much as the next person, but I like to think that if I had a large amount of it, that I would try to help my community. And in this case, I'm talking about the community being the country, right? And I'm even talking past that. I'm saying my community is the world, right? Because the more happy people there are out in the world, the more happiness that I will receive myself.
Yep. So do you believe in a like a one world government?
I believed in whatever would work, really. I mean, if I thought it would work and there was evidence that it could work and it was really productive for the rest of the world, and it also brought incredible amounts of happiness and support and care for, like, people who are poor or whatever, like, or children, then yeah, I mean, I don't think I would have a problem with that. The issue is you can't test it. This is an untestable thing. You can't just be like, all right, everybody get along. It's an untestable thing. So I don't really put a lot of stock or value into the thought of it, because I just know it's impossible.
I mean, and I would, from my personal view, I'd say thankfully impossible.
Sure.
Despite what plays are being made right now on a global stage, because we are very thankful to live in the United States and have the freedoms we do. We couldn't have these conversations that we're having right now in other countries. It's the right to jail meme right away.
Well, we almost might not have it here, given the fact that like, if Biden gets his way and somehow ends up miraculously winning in 2024, like, I mean, they're just going to petition these corporations to censor our speech. The only place I'd be able to do this show would be on X.
Yeah, X and
Well, there's
Rumble.
been more censorship on X after Elon Musk has taken over than prior.
I don't
Not
know, man. That might be
necessarily.
true. We'll see.
No, just by the numbers. Yeah, there's actually a good. I'm not sure if you guys watch this guy's videos. One second here.
I mean, I've at least noticed that my posts are now not shadow banned like they were during the last 2 election cycles. And then I know there was I saw some news article about some advertiser that's related to like this WHO or one of those globalist type organizations that somehow got back in on like some ad roll here on Twitter or now X. So I know that just recently ramped up. I saw one of the prominent, I think it was either Luke Radowski or Alex Jones or someone posting about it. But in any case, yeah, no, I don't agree with the censorship. I don't think that government should go to these social media platforms and say take down this unless there is a lawful reason for them to take down the speech, which is already covered under Section 230 anyways. So it's, it gets into that whole Section 230 debate, which don't have the energy for tonight. But
Yeah. Yeah, we're almost at 1 a.m. We're almost at 1 a.m. And no, man, Groggy, I appreciate you guys coming on.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll just leave you with the video, and then I actually should probably go to sleep as well.
Yeah.
Johnny Harris is the name of the fella. He runs like more deep dive into recent political stories or whatever. Anyway, I don't love all the stuff that he puts out, but he does seem to do things by the numbers and had the sources to back him up. And one of the comments that he made, which I thought was interesting, which was once Elon Musk took over X or Twitter, I guess.
Yeah.
What ended up happening is not just I don't think they had the numbers on like total bans or total censored comments or anything like that, but it was simply how many government requests were brought in to censor speech and how many of them were accepted, which I know was a big talking point of Republicans when it came to the Twitter files. So everybody was expecting that number to go down. I think that was the idea. Is like, well, now it should go down, but it actually went up.
I mean, it sounds like they almost just ramped up the campaign because they were.
Well, he could just deny it, though, right? Like he has the power to deny those requests, but he's not. He's approving them.
That depends. I know, like, is it Argentina or no? It was Brazil. It was the Brazil thing. I mean, that was like the biggest thing in the news as of late. Besides, obviously, what happened this weekend. And so I know they were getting a lot of requests from like the Brazilian government to censor speech. I'd have to limit it more to United States because that's where
I think they talk about that in the video. It's his most recent one, so it just happened to be topical to what you're bringing up. So if you check out his most recent one, I'm pretty sure they talk about specifically in the United States. I know there's some like baloney when it comes to like, well, even the Turkey situation, right? Where when it came to censoring a world leader's or a opponent of a world leader in Turkey, Turkey said prior to Elon taking over X, Turkey requested for Twitter to take down the opponent's posts, and Twitter refused. Pro free speech, in my opinion. But then once Elon took over and Turkey made the request, they did censor the opponent in that country.
Very well.
Little things like that just, got me a little worried. So take a look.
Yeah, for sure.
We shall. Well, Groggy, once again, dude, thank you for joining, and everybody else who was civil in the chat. Sincerely appreciate it. There's a lot of anger out there, a lot of anger. So, like you, I don't know if unity is going to be a thing. We're a long way from there.
I hope for the best.
I definitely felt that there were some areas that we aligned, and I think we can both agree that, or all agree here, that there are some stuff that politicians do that does not help the United States as a whole. And if we could agree on that as opposed to the divisiveness, which is we hear in the media cycle, we would be much better off as a nation. I think that's a fair statement.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, everybody.
All right, gents. Take care.
Take care, buddy. Thank you so much for joining. Everybody who came out tonight, appreciate it. My goodness, I am tired. and I'm pissed off at Discord for failing midway through the stream, making me stop it and restart it. But oh well, now I know how to fix it. All right, everybody, we are done with the stream. Peace out.